Ooh.
What?
Oh, it won't let us do X right now because I'm broke. I couldn't pay for it.
Shit happens.
Oh well.
I can do your X for nothing.
That's what you have me here for.
Oh.
All right, guys, here we go.
Well.
This is where the fun is. This is where you need to go. Where we talk about films and help you get to know. So stick around for Tom and Gerry here on Pop Culture Minefield. About films and help you get to know. So stick around for Tom and Gerry here on Pop Culture Minefield. So stick around for Tom and Gerry here on Pop Culture Minefield. Tom and Gerry here on Pop Culture Minefield.
Man, oh man, what a week. By the way, again, Martin, try to share that link out. Tom, you guys' new videos on NOSFERATU, I shared them with you, are just fantastic, Tom. They really are. And it makes me feel bad for Mark Kermode, because I've known Kermode since, I think, 2000s when we first met, because he got it wrong when he was doing his review of the 1979 film. And he was talking about why F.W. Murnau had shot it and changed the names. And it's like, no, Andre and you were right that it was changed because of the fact that Murnau wanted it for a Germanic audience, and they wouldn't know who the fuck these people were because Dracula wasn't that well known, and it wasn't known at all in Germany. Am I not correct on that?
No, yeah, that's pretty much it. That and their version had some variables, and they were just basically using, and they even credited it, right? It's not like they were trying, like, that's the thing that doesn't make any sense to anybody who says, oh, they were just trying to skirt the copyright. Well, so if that's the case, then why did they say based on Dracula by Bram Stoker?
Yeah, because it says it right in, yeah. I know.
Because they didn't understand everything, but at that point they were changing enough stuff that they were just using Dracula as kind of a skeleton, for lack of a better word, of the story. Because once you get past that first half, 2/3 of the story, the ending, the climax, what the themes are, what the movie's all about, who Count Orlok is, and as far as a comparison to what Dracula is, are very different. And then with this film here that we're about to talk about, it's kind of weird because you kind of have the opposite, but we'll get into that as we get going here. But yeah.
Well, yeah, because, and I'm serious, guys, that documentary, that little, I think it's about 24-minute video you guys did, just fantastic, talking about this film. And if I've never told you before, Tom, you know, Werner Herzog is like one of my top 3 favorite directors of all time. Every movie, I know his movies inside and out. And I feel like I've made Anima into a Werner fan now because she's watched 2 of his films with me. She watched Rescue Dawn and now Nosferatu, and she just loved both of them.
I know my dad is a fan, so I've probably seen more, but don't remember it because that was in my early 20s. When I just.
But she was also tickled, by the way, because we watched together the German version today.
Yeah.
And I told her some of the differences were really how Werner shot some of the dialogue scenes. In the American versions, he did longer shots. And in the German version, he does more cuts in some of the dialogue scenes. And I'm not sure why. But
I mean, like, my understanding is like 50, 60, 70% of the movie is pretty much the same. It's just a few of the dialogue scenes.
Well, any of the long shots where there's no dialogue are the same shots.
Yeah, they're exactly the same. But
big
like otherwise,
when they have to speak German.
Yeah, because he had such a diverse cast. Imagine that they all didn't speak German or English, and he only had a couple that could. Because basically, the 2 main stars being, oh God, I just forgot his name. The main guy who plays
Bruno. Yeah. Klaus Kinski.
Klaus Kinski, and then of course the guy who plays Harker.
Those
are the.
Oh,
what, Martin?
I lost his.
I should just bring it up here so I have the stuff in front of me.
His grand something.
Bruno Ganz.
He's
the guy who played Hitler.
Bruno Ganz, yeah.
He's also the angel in the original film, German film, that was adapted by Nick Cage with Nick Cage and Meg Ryan, City of Angels. He's in the original German. There were 2 films. And I love both of them. They're so weird. Peter Falk's in there. It's weird.
Yeah, so Kinski. So basically, Kinski and Ganz were the only 2 who could actually speak English well enough to do their own dialogue in the English scenes. Otherwise, everybody had to be dubbed in either both and or one or the other anyway. So, like, yeah. So most of it was dubbed.
Isabelle Adjani attempted to do German, but she was doing it phonetically. She had learned it phonetically, and it didn't work. So, but if you watch her in the German scenes, she is actually speaking German. But it's another actress that dubbed her.
Some people are just really talented, and even not speaking the language, they get it right enough that, I mean, it's obviously, they obviously don't really know what they're saying, but they get close enough that you buy it as a German native speaker. But mostly you can just tell they are saying word by word by word. They don't have the melody that you need in a sentence to make it sound real. So I'm glad they dubbed it and used somebody who really speaks German.
Yeah, and I agree. And Isabelle Adjani is such an interesting, because she was already a star. She was very well known. And I think in respect to the film, other than Klaus Kinski, the 2 of them are the only 2 known actors in the movie. Nobody knew who Bruno Ganz was outside of Germany or German-speaking Europe.
I was wondering whether he spoke English back then, because he was working in Germany mostly.
I don't know about Bruno. Because everything I've ever seen him in, he speaks German.
Yeah, right.
But he does speak English. He was in that American film with Dennis Hopper, My American Friend.
Yeah, but that was later, wasn't it?
No, that was back 70.
That was before it, I believe.
Yeah, it was 76. I think 76.
Because I think he had just made that when this came out. So like, he was actually not like well known, but established enough in the U.S. at that time. But yeah.
Yeah, because he did My American Friend. It got released, and then he was in Germany shooting this next, because this was his second or next film. So, but Bruno Ganz is great, and what he is best known for is playing Adolf. In that, what was the name of the film? I forget the name of it.
Downfall. I think.
Downfall. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was it. Downfall. And I love that you and Andre put that in that video. Talking about Nosferatu. Did you? Oh, you got it here.
Yeah, it's here. I'm gonna put.
Es bleiben im Raum Keitel, Jodel, Krebs und Butter. Das war ein
We're dead.
Der Angriff Steiners war Befehl! Wer schickt sie? Die gesamte Generalität des Militärs hat verloren! Das verlässliche Treue!
I mean, yes, I did.
Mein Führer, was Sie da sagen, ist ungeheuerlich.
Don't worry, Edgar's will fix it.
That's fucking great. Did you make that, Tom?
Yeah.
Oh my
It's
god,
awesome.
that's fucking
It's
brilliant.
awesome.
That's fucking
That is
brilliant,
brilliant.
dude.
Especially when you know what he's really saying. It's even funnier.
Yeah, well, that's why I was telling Andre, because like Andre, well, the first time we did it, he's like, the voice and the sync is off just a bit. And I'm like, does it really fucking matter? Because unless you can speak German, you can't tell what he's saying anyway. And even if you can speak German, it's probably coming off as half gibberish because I had to chop it up so the copyright bots wouldn't get it. So like it's like 2-3 different lines out of place and stuff, and I probably in the middle of sentence. I have no idea. I can only speak so much German, so he's just screaming. So it's to me, it's just coming off as randomness anyway, probably. So I have no idea if it even translates
he's
well.
chewing out his officers for not following orders, and they're trying to save their ass.
But since I cut it all out of whack, I don't know how it sounds. Like I'm saying, like I have no idea.
Absolutely great, dude. I love that. Send it to me. I want to keep it. I want to play that every once in a while. That's so fucking good.
But yeah, this was one of shit. There was what 5 or 6 Dracula or vampire movies released in '79. It was like the year of the vampire.
There were 3, and you guys brought up in the documentary, and all 3 of them are ones that I went to see.
Well, there was
and
more than that even,
3.
but you had Dracula, you had Nosferatu, obviously, you had Love at First Bites, Nocturna.
Love at First Bite.
Dracula Blows His Cool. I've never even heard of that one.
And
you also had Thirst in Salem's Lot as well. Yeah.
Never heard those. Well, Salem's Lot, of course, but so I wanted to go back though, because the interesting thing for me is that, you know, Werner wanted to kind of go back and do Dracula. Because
so he changed everything back to Dracula, basically.
But just like the 1979 Dracula that came out the same year, that had Sir Laurence Olivier and what's his name?
Frank Langella.
Frank Langella. They did the same thing in that movie of switching Mina and Lucy because she was Lucy Harker. And I thought that was so odd because I know they weren't reading.
I never understood why they did that because I think there's another adaptation that did it as well.
Well, Anima and I talked about it, and we think it's because the name Mina or Wilhelmina is a little alien to the tongue, and Lucy is a common American name or English name, Anglo name. So I think she's right. I think she's on something there. That's probably why they chose Lucy in both films.
Because, basically at this point, the reason he changed it back to the original character names was to avoid confusion, more or less. Because at this point, when they made the original Dracula,
nobody knew who Dracula was in Germany.
Nobody knew who all the characters really were, so it didn't really matter. And like you guys were saying, they changed the character names so they'd be closer to, or more Germanic names, or however you want to put it. In this version, they're like, well, everybody knows these characters now, so they just changed the names back to Dracula and everything. Almost confusing matters because, again, once you hit that third act, it kind of deviates from the original Dracula novel, and especially in Herzog's, he really gets into the plague aspect, which is kind of also played into quite a bit in the newer version. But I mean, he really gets into it. Yeah.
If anybody goes back to the original concepts of Dracula, even though rats aren't in it, the concept of vampirism, the way it's portrayed in that, is like the plague. And
kind of, but like that was the thing that Nosferatu really played up because it was probably something that was still, I mean, maybe Anima can speak to this more, but I'm sure it was something that was still probably fresh in the minds of some of the older folks in the area at that time when that film still came out. So they used it as a way to get to, to get to your inner fears, or you heard your grandparents talking about it or something like that, maybe. And that's where they really dug into it, and especially with the rat, right? Because the rat had never really had very much to do with Dracula prior to that. It was mostly the bat and the wolf. It was Nosferatu that introduced, and it was because of the plague. And even Francis Ford Coppola, if you notice,
exactly,
he throws all over in his too. Yeah.
When he's in the bed with
well,
Mina,
not just that, they're all over the castle.
Transforms into a pile of rats, and they leave the ship, and it's a plague ship. We've warned everyone. I love that they kept that in there because that really. But
it wasn't as heavy-handed in the original Dracula. Is my point. It was like Nosferatu really leaned into it, and this film really amped it up even more to where you even see. Like even with the new film, like I don't know who here has seen the new film, where you actually see more of it. To where in the original Nosferatu,
I have.
Oh, you didn't like it as much?
It freaked her out.
Oh, I love the new one. I mean, the new one's.
I don't do demons. I just
the one complaint that I have, and it's not really a complaint; it's more of a nit, is they turned it into a secular film, where religion doesn't really play into it, and there is a religious aspect that's important within Dracula. Within the original Nosferatu, and of course the 79 version, heavily influenced in there because her sacrifice is intentionally meant to be a sacrifice. Right. She's doing it to kill him.
And what I'm saying, like this, when you have those beautifully shot scenes throughout the square, and you have that crazy family just sitting at the table, like just accepting
the Last Supper.
Fate.
Yes, the Last Supper,
accepting their fate, and they're just. They all don't know if they're going to live or die at that point, and it's just all like. And I got to imagine that's probably what it was like in the final days of the plague, because at that point you're like, I don't know if I'm going to live or die. Fuck it.
Because you bring up the plague, there's something interesting in this movie and I have seen and read many vampire stories, but never ever was. It was always like if they travel, there needs to be soil in their coffins from their home country. They never leave their country basically that way. In this movie, it needs to be soil from a graveyard. The victims
not their home country, but the ground in which they were first interred or
first buried.
Yeah. Well, that is their home country back in the old days.
Oh well.
But this time it needs to be from a graveyard with plague victims, and that was new. I've never heard that before. That was very interesting.
Now, something was brought up by Anima while we're talking. I actually made the comment on the video over on YouTube, that, your video, Tom. And she brought up something that nobody has talked about, is that vampires come from Lilith, according to lore. That she rejected God and her place as a wife, a baby-bearing wife for Adam, and ended up being turned into a succubus. And every time she procreates, she gives birth to a vampire. And of course, she's not able to see her mirror image anymore in mirrors because of her vanity. And so a lot of the lore from Lilith went into the vampire world, but they seem to never mention her.
That's kind of funny, because I've never heard the tie-in with that. See, because that's where Nosferatu also differed from Dracula as well, is that they took all the rules and flipped them around and took them out, because like Dracula had specific rules, and since then the rules have changed and they become more in line with what most movies decided the rules were.
Yeah, because in Dracula was running water, Christian symbols, roses, and garlic. And what else was mentioned in Dracula, Chris?
Silver.
I think you also have to invite him in. Was also
the purity of silver.
But like sunlight, it was never like something that would kill him per se, because he could just wander around.
He was weaker,
sun.
Right?
He was just weaker in the daytime.
As far as
Nosferatu is what introduced the sun being the thing, Yeah.
As far as these things are concerned, actually, silver is an invention of Hollywood.
Silver wasn't in the original Dracula.
No, silver was essentially came from when they were doing How to Kill a Werewolf with silver bullets, and the reason they came up with silver bullets was the original Lone Ranger. One of his.
That's it.
Yeah, he had silver bullets, so they thought, perfect, silver bullets kill werewolves. So silver is an invention, and actually mirrors, I believe, is an invention of Bram Stoker's.
It comes from Lilith originally, because Lilith wasn't allowed to see her reflection because of her vanity.
Well, that may have been something that Bram Stoker referenced, because...
I absolutely believe so, because he is... If you go back and read the Making of Dracula book, He did massive research. There you go. Did massive. You know what I'm talking about.
I think part of the problem is everybody kind of associated more with Vlad the Impaler. They probably forgot that aspect. You're probably right.
Well,
he went and did the research on the Dimitri, which was the ship. And he went into everything about it. Demeter is what he changed it to. It was the Dimitri, the real ship.
Oh, okay. Not the. This is
but
the Mary
Christopher
Celeste.
is correct about the Wolfman. Like, believe it or not, 90% of the shit that we associate with werewolves comes directly from the Wolfman movie,
which is great. It was an original Hollywood creation, and I love that. It's not based on anything except for the legend of werewolves. Which,
if you pay attention, is really they just took a lot of the vampire rules and either flipped them around or just used different aspects. Yeah. It's kind of
absolutely. And by the way, Slater Fred, you are correct on that. I also like that they really dug into the rats by making his fangs even more rat-like.
Well, that's what I was getting at. Yeah.
I was
saying, like,
Oh, sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say with the association with plague. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say for me, the rat association just visually, I think the original silent Nosferatu, which, by the way, I know that you've probably heard this a lot, but brilliant job on the updating. Or I shouldn't say updating, but the revisions you made with Nosferatu, and I have been enjoying the retrospective you guys.
Oh, it's great! I love the.
By the way, all of these are in the private chat. So in the public chat. So everybody in the audience, please follow those links to those videos that Chris is mentioning. They are awesome.
And I'm glad you brought up the chat because we haven't said hello to everybody.
Okay.
So let's say hi to everyone in the chat. We got Tom Baker, who is back. We missed you, Tom, while we were gone. Of course, lovely Penny is here today. And our good friend Regis is here, but not his wife, which is Emmanuel, who's like almost always here. So Regis, I hope your wife gets around and joins us. They're over there in France. And we got Brian Sanchez, Read by Nature, JPRPH1, and of course, if you go to war, you want a war monkey. War monkey is here. So
and also hi, Chris. Great to have
his
you.
Preferred weapon is his own poop. He loves to throw poop at his enemies.
Ew.
We love you, Chris, even if you have abandoned us.
Always
good.
You,
to have you here is awesome. Every single time.
Absolutely. So Chris is here, and our good friend Stephen is here. And we are both playing the part of Nosferatu today because I have the Mask by Don Post Studios, which is something, Tom, I have wanted to get since that thing came out in '79. I want that mask.
I must say, visually, Nosferatu, as a silent film, along with, of course, Metropolis and Dr. Caligari, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, really set the tone for a lot of the visual language we know today. And as Das Wolfen loves, I always point out that when the shadow reaches and clasps at her breasts and she faints, the name for that is Nosferatu Bubengraben. So we
Anima, any thoughts on that?
No.
By
the way, though, I will say
you're racist.
I accept boobs of all Grabens.
No, that's not racist. It's xenophobic. Get it right.
Yeah, get it right, woman.
Whatever. I'm being bullied for being Austrian and speaking German.
I have really loved for years. I mean, coming out of the goth scene, of course, I'm currently on my 5th or 6th reading of Dracula right now, because after the Nosferatu craze and the work that Midnight's Edge has done, I've decided that with my animation skills, I'm going to attempt to put out a plan to create my own Dracula movie. Dracula in 3 acts, in my opinion, is one of the great works of horror that has influenced everything that we know today, from At the Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft, Alien. A lot of these themes, even though they are difficult to immediately recognize are all in modern horror movies. They all came from Dracula. And it is really a story of confronting, going out into the frontier, discovering ancient evil that what would you call the Enlightenment era thinking is unable to comprehend or handle, and then growing into something that is kind of the merger of civilization and religious thinking to chase down evil and destroy it where it lives, which is why in the original Dracula novel, they chase Dracula back to his castle in Transylvania. So, and to answer your question of why they keep switching Mina with Lucy and all these different names, it really comes down to Hollywood thinking. You can't copyright Dracula now, but you can make augmentations to Dracula as a story, using it as a template or a jumping off point. Call something else Dracula, as the Hammer horror movies did, and that sort of and all sorts of movies across the world have done. But you get to copyright your version of Dracula, and the best way to kind of ensure that your copyright sticks is to move some things around.
Well, I just still find it odd, though. In 1978, they're shooting these films separately with no connection. Nobody knows each other. Werner Herzog and the directors and the filmmakers of 1979 Dracula that we saw with Frank Langella decided to pick Lucy as the main female character. And the only thing that makes sense there is that it's such an Anglo name, that it would be easier and understood by Americans in particular that, oh, Lucy, well, yeah, I can see that. That's a likable name, blah, blah, blah. But those of us who know the text are like, yeah, but Lucy is not the main character. But you get past it. I got past it. I get over it. I'm like, whatever. You're combining characters. But then they switch in this version, Werner Herzog's film. Mina is the wife of Harker's best friend.
They, Lucy, I think is a more popular name, a more instantly recognizable name, and it's. Yeah. I named in the Quantum Terror. I named one of my characters Lucy, and it did have a little bit of a throwback to Dracula. It had a few symbolic reasons, which I did choose that name, which I won't go into. But
Lucy is short for Lucifer.
There's that connection that people make. Lucy also does kind of come back to Lilith as well. Just what would you call it? Not alliteration, but anyway. By the way, I have a very bad cold today, but it was just, I got your message and I was like, I have said no to so many live streams. I can't say no to another one. So here I am.
Yeah, I consider Stephen Moffat's Dracula good until about the middle. And then it derails. And so, but the BBC oddly made the most accurate Dracula back in the 70s.
Is that the Jack Palance Dracula?
No, that's somebody else. But no, there's another version done by the BBC that is it's considered the most accurate depiction of the book. The second most accurate is Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola.
That one is actually very impressive and visually stunning. It has some major flaws with it. One is just the extreme melodrama that's almost laughable, but I do love it. Really, where the Francis Ford Coppola Bram Stoker's Dracula went awry was just simply trying to make Dracula into a tragic figure and turn it into a romance rather than, a demonic ancient evil. So that's, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, I know.
Guys,
yeah, man.
I had to interrupt, but we have to acknowledge this. Lost for Words with a.
Yes, I saw that. Thank you very much, Lost for Words. Very kind of you for throwing your British quids at us. We appreciate it. We appreciate money in any form. And you welcome to read it, Martin, because I'm actually doing something.
Oh, it says, "Hi panel, hi chat. Looking forward to the stream."
The stream of blood.
We should get the slideshow started. We're half an hour in.
I wanted to show that this is the one I was talking about. Count Dracula, 1977, by the BBC. And it is considered by aficionados of Dracula to be the most accurate depiction of Dracula from the book. And,
by the way, I will die on the hill of the mustache is stupid, and any Dracula movie that gets rid of it is, just upgrading a little bit. It's not a perfect book. It's one of my favorite, but that mustache has got to go for the theater.
Count would have had a mustache, though. That's the thing.
I know, but it's sometimes I think we get so in love.
Christopher
realism.
Lee did that though, right?
He did a totally separate version just so he could have the
He
mustache.
did it. It was not a Hammer. It was a European film. I don't know if it was
Franco.
Italian or Spanish. Is Franco?
Yeah, Franco did it. Yeah.
So it's Spanish. So
this is the problem, though, with accuracy and realism at all times visually. I understand, why people like verisimilitude, but to a point, when it comes to a novel versus, seeing it on the screen, there are just certain things that, they just don't translate over. And I think filmmakers should think about the audience and the visual aesthetic because as much as people are receiving Nosferatu, the new one, very well, that mustache has become a meme all over the place. And it's
like my least favorite part. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets to a point where, and I was talking to a fellow filmmaker. His name's Chris Young, and he went to see Nosferatu with his wife. And his wife's not a movie buff, and my wife's not a movie buff. This is the kind of thing when you go with a normie, always listen to their reactions. And he turned to her afterwards, and he saw she was scrolling her phone, which he says she never does in the theater. And he's like, "What did you think?" And she's like, "Good to start, got boring at the end. What's with the porn stash?" And if you have something that just, takes the audience out of the movie, it doesn't matter how well you're doing. You've kind of stepped on your own to do that. So, and I love Christopher Lee.
But look, check out that mustache. It was 1970.
So how did you feel about how they did it in the Francis Ford Coppola version with where it was more of a goatee? Did you mind that so much?
It was such the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula, which I was as a teenager. I think I was 16 or 17 at the time when that came out, and HBO had dropped a half-hour special kind of promoting it, showing the cast, and you can see it on YouTube. It's really fun to watch, showing the cast rehearsing and talking about why they were doing things a certain way. And I was hyped for that movie. And when I saw it, as a teenager, I thought it was great. Revisiting it throughout the years, I see its flaws, and I see that it is just, it's a very wonderful, it's kind of a throwback to the Hammer aesthetic, but they were doing all these cool practical effects things. Francis Ford Coppola was still clearly drinking red wine and doing cocaine and bonkers as all hell. So all that visual aesthetic, all that over the top stuff, it was so over the top that I accepted it. And, but the nobleman, the buns and and then when he had the locks and the goatee, it was more of like, at that point, it was like I was watching an updated Dark Shadows. It was so, and as much as I love Gary Oldman, that thick Transylvania accent and the really melodramatic lines, he's like pouring his heart out to me, and he goes, "I love you too much to condemn you," and she's, "Take me away from all this death." And it's like, as much as I'm into the movie, like I just started bursting out laughing because it's like, it's just so soap opera over the top, but like, to hell with it. It's its own thing, and I love it for that. Despite all of its flaws, it kind of transcends everything.
Look, we need to get into talking some more about what's going on here, but I do want to point out, Dan Curtis, could you bring up Dark Shadows? Dark Shadows actually helped bring back the passion for vampire movies. Mm-hmm. And Dan Curtis actually directed the 1974 Dracula with Jack Palance, which you brought up. And I actually like that film because, man, nobody can hiss like fucking Jack Palance. He did it right through his teeth. It's fucking awesome.
It's one of the ones I haven't seen, actually, but I do want to see it.
You
is
should
available
watch it.
on
It's
Amazon.
fun.
Yeah.
Absolute overacting. Jack Palance, that's how he made his career, overacting.
Does he do push-ups?
Yeah, he does at the Oscars, man. Back when the Oscars was actually something. Now, I want to point out a posit here on the slideshow, because this is something, Tom, that I've always loved, was that I knew the story that before he wrapped shooting the film, he went all the way back to Mexico because he'd already been here once and seen this in person, and went back to see this mausoleum under this city in Mexico where they keep the dead. They're mummified because of the dry air. And so it's like, these aren't dolls. These are actually really fucking human beings that have been mummified.
Ray Bradbury brought those to awareness because he would visit, and he wrote stories in the 60s about these, and then that kind of blew up. Like, everybody wanted to go see if this was real, and it is. Those are Victorian shoes.
Well, and the fucked up part about these are they actually have a museum now. I did some research into this.
Yeah.
And these are people who they have like basically like a grave tax down there. And if you don't have any family members left, or
oh my God, no.
No, I shit you not. This is the honest to God truth. They take your fucking body out of the graves and you end up being a part of this. Yeah. So it's very controversial.
But shit, I didn't know that.
Yes, but it has become such a big part of their economy that they continue to do it, but it is very like they're constantly dealing with the, like the idea of what this is. Because this is, I mean, you got children's body, you got everything like down there, like, because that's what they did. They put them down in this cavern thing and they get mummified, from what you guys were saying, the atmosphere.
Yep.
And so then they started opening it to tourists, and it got nuts. So so now there's actually a museum there, and a lot of these bodies they have protesters and other people's all the time, but it's such a big part of their economy in that city that they won't get rid of it. But I don't know if they still do the death tax thing or whatever, but that's where all these bodies came from, though. So yeah.
And this is all over Mexico. I mean, they've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's I didn't realize that the museum was, they were like exhuming them. I thought, I thought they were just essentially, they would move some bodies out, because it was, back in Egypt, a lot of mummies were lost simply because they would be people, the Egyptians would dig them out and use them as firewood because they would burn really well.
Oh, fuck off.
And then they found out that, these archaeologists were coming in and wanting them. And then there was kind of like scams with money where they were trying to sell them to like European travelers and that sort of thing. So, crazy that there's an economy of dried corpses. This is why we're changing it to Gulf America.
That's insane. The film opens, wonderfully on Isabelle Adjani screaming awake from a nightmare, and which is something that's was that in the silent film? I don't remember.
I didn't open like that.
No, I know that in the new one it does.
Yeah, no.
In the original, we the first time we see the wife. She's gardening.
She's playing with her cat.
This is why she was hired, I believe, because she looked so fucking haunted all the time in this movie. Isabelle Adjani. She's a very timid speaking person to begin with, but she has a haunted look to her all the time.
They also, I always thought that they modeled her after, what was that Bela Lugosi vampire movie? But it wasn't a Dracula one, and I'm not thinking of the name.
Oh, Vampira?
No, it was called. I think it was called The Vampire Bat. I'm gonna have to look that up. Continue.
No worries. Now they ended up shooting in two different locations. Part of this was shot in Holland, and they weren't able to get some of the rights. But some of these shots, like that one there, that is actually from the original town the silent film was shot in, and you actually get some of the same buildings from the original Nosferatu. including the building where he's the famous one where he's in the window looking at her. But in this version, same building, he has the window open before he hauntingly, because he did play this character like a ghost, as Tom mentioned.
Let's see.
And there you see her photo and her little bit of hair in the locket. Oh, wait, what's this? Vlad Tepes's descendants wanted to bring a lawsuit against Coppola because it's linked to Count Vlad Tepes.
Well, that's the thing is the really it only in Bram Stoker's research, he just kind of saw that Vlad Tepes was sometimes known as Dracul. I think it was how you said it.
Which used to mean two things. It meant dragon, and Dracul also means in devil.
And he just kind of, jotted that down. It's like, oh, that's a good name.
Yeah, those are all in his notes. Yep.
But when you
pause here. This is something that's bothered me every time I've ever watched this movie, all the way back to 1979 when I saw it, is there's this guy on that fucking bridge. It's creepy looking. His back is to us. He's hunched over, probably looking over the rail, and he's wearing a cape. And I'm like, Anna and I wondered, is he just accidentally they caught some guy that was looking over the bridge like that? But no, this is a fucking movie. These are extras. So why is he doing? Oh, what'd you do? You went further back.
Well, Tom, wasn't it in one of your retrospects, I believe, where they said that Herzog would not let the extras know when he was shooting? So
he would secretly shoot there. There's the guy standing there, hunched over. He looks creepy as fuck in the shot. Now I hit pause and it's going again.
Technical difficulties.
No, Martin's clicking while I'm clicking. That's what's going on. So anyway, that was something that creeped me out the first time I saw it. And every single time I notice it, this guy hunched over outside their house.
Mark of the Vampire was the movie I was thinking of, by the way. That if you look, he has a vampire.
It's a non-universal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
Okay, I have a video to run here, if you allow me.
By what name are you known?
There are some who call me Tim.
Now, ironically, we were talking about this before the show, that one of the Dracula films that was remade at night while they were making Dracula with Bela Lugosi. They made the Spanish Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
And they used the same sets and costumes.
And
LaBelle is a producer on it. Same guy that produced Dracula.
Not the same costume for Mina. Mina's costume in Spanish Dracula was a lot more see-through, which when the first time I saw it, I was very surprised that they got away with that back then. Because it was post-code, right?
Yeah. But it wasn't going to be released in the U.S. It went to Havana, and then eventually, I can't remember, it went somewhere else. It never got released in the U.S. Some think that the Spanish version is superior to the Todd Browning version. I've seen it. I don't think so. I think it's almost exactly the same. I think Bela is what makes Dracula so good, and I think that's what made it a hit. It was also released a month later because February 14th of 31 is when they released Dracula in America. And I think it was March 21st of 31 when they released Spanish Dracula in Havana. And I'm not sure why they waited. I think they wanted to give the first Dracula its shot before releasing even the Spanish one, because it was released overseas too. But Bruno Ganz has a distant look as Jonathan Harker. And this actor, I forget his name, that plays Renfield in this, his boss, is, oh my God, he's so fucking good in this role.
And look at him in this scene.
Topor. He's Renfield. Roland Topor.
He's very good in this. And his cackle in this, what makes it even more insane, in my opinion, than any other version of Dracula, is it's almost like he has that condition that they talk about with the movie The Joker, where he can't control it. Because when you look at his face, he doesn't look like he's laughing.
No. Well, also look at him. He's always hunched over, like he's as if he's in pain. And I'm telling you, the guy on the bridge.
I think you're right. I think that is watching, spying on him, because it's something that's never been talked about. But why is there this weird hunched over guy on the bridge as he leaves the house? It's just weird. And I would love to get a hold of Herzog and ask him, what's up with that dude?
He was picked. They didn't just randomly choose him. He was being picked because he was with that particular girl.
Herzog is a very deliberate director.
Very much so. And even more than some other directors. I mean, I have nitpicked the shit out of Bram Stoker's Dracula for continuity errors. So many. But it's hard to find them with Herzog, because there's this naturalistic approach to how he does everything. And I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Tom, Chris, he shoots his films a lot of time in continuity.
I believe so, yeah. I know, but I don't know if that's the case all of the time.
No, it's. I don't think it is all the time, but when he's on a location, he will shoot all those scenes, but he'll shoot them in order of how they happen. And I don't know if that's because of how his brain works, because he fucking, and I love this scene because this mirrors the scene at the end. Even though there's no water, instead of water running over the sand, like in this scene, it's dust. And I mean, it's so fucking gorgeous and horrifying, the end of this film. The concept of what's happening is that he's going out into the world to spread vampirism.
Yeah. And of course, the absence of water for dust is, this shot is life, and the final shot is death.
The absence of life, yeah. I have a simple explanation as to why Herzog is so exact and pedantic almost. He's German.
Yeah. Yeah, OCD is where it came from Germany, I think.
It came from Germany. Yeah, it spread from Germany, definitely.
I just love, I love interviews with him, because every time he speaks, you get the sense that this is someone, and this is, people have been talking about this lately with David Lynch as well. Everything that they do and that Herzog does is he has a reason, and he's thought about it a lot. He's not one of these journeyman directors that just comes in and goes, okay, this shot, line this up, okay, shot, reverse shot, that sort of thing. He feels everything that he's doing, and he works very hard to get that in front of the camera so that the audience gets those feelings as well. And he's very good at it. This is a reason why we talk about him, not just as an eccentric personality, but why his movies are so memorable.
In answer to your question, Lon Chaney did do some talkie films, as they called them back then, because it was in the early days when it was coming around. But it was during his shooting of one of the films that he discovered he had cancer. And I don't know if he was able to finish that film. I know that
to Slasher Fred is the Unholy 3.
Yeah, the Unholy 3. But he was working on another film when he got sick and died. So I don't know if they completed that or recast it.
Hey,
caveat. And by the way, hi Slasher Fred. Who else popped in here? Ram Bam 3000 jumped in. Who else did I miss?
He's throwing some German at me.
Soul Assassin, Eddie A, Shinatsky.
Shinatsky.
I have no dick. I have no dick. I have no dick is his name. I have
no dick. Starting again.
That's that weeks ago. Harlan Ellison story, right? I have no dick and I must pee.
And I must pee, Harlan Ellison.
No, we had that happen
now they shot
weeks ago that weird people dropped in.
No, but
they shot the.
Go on.
They shot these scenes. They shot these scenes in Czechoslovakia, and he actually hired gypsies to play these. I don't think they're actors. So there's a great scene where the gypsies are talking to Harker, trying to warn him, and the German owner of the inn has to translate for him. It's a great scene, both in English and in the German version.
The villagers are always very important to any Dracula story, I feel, because it really, again, it comes in contact with the Western thinking of we're enlightened, we have nothing to fear, no superstition. And Jonathan Harker just kind of blindly keeps marching towards Castle Dracula as everybody around that knows is going like, are you crazy?
And they're telling him, are you sure you want to do that?
Like
they're in this scene in particular, Chris, it's one of those bar moments where the guy says the wrong thing in a bar and then it just suddenly goes silent. The piano stops playing and everybody's staring at him because he says, can you hurry with my food? Because I want to get to Dracula's castle. And it's not the speed that got them upset. It's the mentioning of Dracula. And Mama there drops a pot and Daddy, the owner, walks over and he is like, you don't want to do that. You know, you need to be careful even talking about it.
There's a lot of emphasis in the novel of people telling him not to go, people pressing crucifixes into his hands. Several people do it. And they even try, like the innkeepers and stuff, try and delay his journey. And when they go to drop him where they're going to meet the carriage, they like get there super early. And the driver just goes, oh, he's not here. You'll come with us, you know, like we'll drop you off in a couple of days. Because it's also May the 5th, which is St. George's Day, the day where all evil is supposed to have sway over the lands. So they're really nervous. And there's a great moment in the novel where they're going like, oh no, we'll take you on. And Dracula just pulls up next to him and terrifies everybody. As they don't realize, Jonathan Harker doesn't realize it's Dracula. It's just a coachman, but he looks and he's got glowing red eyes.
And that's different in this version, by the way.
Yeah.
It's just a regular coachman in this. But I like that's one of the things I liked in Bram Stoker's is that with Francis Ford Coppola is the eeriness of the coach driver is hidden underneath like a weird looking armor, and his hand stretches down to lift him up and put him into the carriage. And I like with the new Nosferatu how this coach is coming at him and then suddenly it's sideways in the road with the door opening and there's no coachman. There's no coachman on that fucking coach. That was fucking wild. And like I said, that movie was too much for Anima. She could not take that movie. She kept having to avert her eyes and shit. But this version is far more artistic. And it was, this film was the second birth of German cinema. And Herzog was such an essential filmmaker to help bring Germany back because, as Andre and Tom put into the new documentary they did, they talked about how Germany was shut down after the war. And the Allies watched everything they did they went over it with a fine-tooth comb. They wanted to make sure there was no hidden messages about Nazism.
And a lot of expressionism came out of the First World War as well.
Well, that's where German expressionism started, exactly. Yeah. But it died at the onset of the war, and German cinema was dead for a while.
So much propaganda. They just used the whole movie industry only for propaganda.
Yeah, because there were rumors abound that they had killed some filmmakers. It's not true. They didn't. What happened was a lot of filmmakers left and got the hell out of Germany and got out of their reach. In fact, Murnau came to America in 26.
There was a big artistic exodus because even though German Mustache Man he was kind of a poser.
He was in the 30s. He didn't really come into the scene until the 30s. But there were already leanings that way because of what happened with the Treaty of Versailles. Killed Germany in many ways financially. And so there was all this expressionism, and part of the reason I think expressionism was coming up was there was no money to make movies, so they used art for films, paint backgrounds and shit, and expressionism began right there on cinema because of the lack of funding.
Expressionism and Dada as well. There's a story about it. Was that?
I said hi, Courtney, because she says hi to me.
Oh, hi, Courtney.
Sorry.
But yeah, these, you know, I think that again, there was a lot of wonderful things that the Germans did post World War I that have influenced everything. People like to try and always kind of heap a lot of credit over to Russian cinema, which there was good stuff going on, but I always felt was kind of ponderous. I think the Germans were the edgy ones. You know, there's a great movie. It's called Max. You ever heard of that one? Mm-hmm. That's kind of about that era and those artists. And it's funny because Hitler comes in as a
we don't say that name.
Voldemort.
His first name, Adolf. The robots are listening.
Lord Moldybutt.
Lord Moldybutt
came in, you know, and they, you know, he's trying to be a part of the scene and he's just not making it. And they're kind of patting him on the head. And then he makes his drawings of his vision of Germany, and they're going like, yes, this is what you want to do. And they're speaking about, you know, artistic terms because they're showing in like old rundown, like warehouses, you know, gallery shows and stuff. And Lord Moldybutt is just, you know, sitting there thinking that they're praising his vision for Germany. And of course, he ends up, you know, essentially, you know, not just being a dictator of Germany, but dictator of what art is. You know, he tried to, you know, because Clownfish said something really great the other day when they talked about messages in movies. They said everyone's, you know, even back then they were trying to put the pill in the ice cream. It's like, we don't want the pill. Don't, you know. Anyway,
you know, they think that we need them to do that. It's ridiculous, dude. It really is.
It's arrogance. You know, these wonderful things that we see. You know, Herzog is, you know, he really is an artistic purist. He was
one of the Germans that helped bring cinema back to Germany. He wasn't the only one, but the fact is, he made the film that opened Germany back up to the world, and this is the movie.
Yeah.
This film brought Germanic cinema back into the globe for the entire world to enjoy, and that's why I'm like, tell people, you know, especially Germanic people, be appreciative of this guy because he's the one who did this. He helped push it, and I love Werner for that because he really makes, my God, so many great fucking movies. I found out that Rob Zombie music video "Living Dead Girl" was based on German expressionist films. Yeah, you'll find it all over the place.
The Cabinet of Dr.
Monkey Bone, for God's sakes, a silly movie like Monkey Bone borrows heavily from German expressionism.
Well, you see it in Tim Burton. You see it in and yes, Rob Zombie's videos. Rob Zombie was all over German expressionism, and you know, when again in the '90s, when I used to go to goth clubs, a lot of these expressionist movies were projected on the walls around the dance floor while we were, you know, and even bands like The Cure and Bauhaus. I mean, they're called Bauhaus. How much more, you know?
Oh, which reminds me, the soundtrack, Anima. What was the name of that band that did the soundtrack for this? I sent to you.
Was it
Anima?
Was it Tangerine Dream?
No.
Anima.
She's gone.
I looked it up for her. She's the one with the information. Oh my gosh, Anima. Why would you leave now? Did the cat vomit again? Oh my God.
If it was an Italian film, it would be Goblin.
There you go. It looks like she's cleaning more cat vomit.
No.
It happens. It happens a lot.
So one of the things I did love at the time, just to bring this up again, because I have wanted this since I was a kid, is the Don Post Studios mask and hands. that you put. I don't know if they came with the showcase or if you had to buy that separately, but just look at this.
Nice.
Okay, I think the composer that you're looking for is Popol Vuh.
It was. Thank you. And it appeared in a little film called Fright Night, because Peter Vincent had that in his home. And I love that Evil Ed gravitates to it immediately when he comes through the door. It's just like, oh, and he gets right in front of it. I'm like, get out of the way, fucker. But that was a beautiful piece of artwork. And occasionally you'll find it pop up on eBay. It's like over $1,000 to get it now.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm back.
Yeah, thank you, hon. I was calling for you, and you weren't there.
I could hear you yell. I had a phone call that I had to take.
Oh, I had to take a German phone call. Sorry, it was my aunt.
It was Austrian, you asshole.
So the name of the band is what I asked, but Martin got in for. But did you find out anything about that band?
Yeah, the name, as I say, comes from the Maya manuscript about the Maya history.
Yep.
And the founder, his name is Fricke. He met Herzog and then played a cameo in his movie Signs of Life. And that started the collaboration because he contributed to they contributed to soundtracks to Aguirre, Nosferatu, Phantom der Nacht, Fitzcarraldo, Cobra Verde, Heart of Grass.
And for Americans,
of Kaspar Hauser.
It's Popol, like Popol, Vuh, V-U-H. But in Spanish, it's pronounced differently. Martin said it.
Popol Vuh.
And for the Bela Lugosi's dead comment, I'll just say, undead, undead, undead.
Fright Night, the original, is just fantastic. Just fun from beginning to end.
Will I ever watch it?
I thought you watched it with me because we did a show.
Yeah.
So I got to quick story about Fright Night. I have talked to and interviewed several times Steve Johnson, who did the special effects on that. Has such great stories about doing the makeup, but there's the scene, I don't think I'm spoiling too much here, but when the vampire tries to demonstrate that he's immortal and he stabs the pencil through his hand, that was inspired by Excalibur. Steve Johnson was watching this moment where the sword's in his side and he pulls it out and he's like, that must be a retracting blade. He's like, but when he turns, you can see the blade sticking out the other side. But then he turns forward and pulls it out. You can see the tip of the blade in that. So it must be retractable. And then he bends again and the blade is not sticking out anymore. It's like there must have been someone on the other side who had a string and pulled it out.
It's done right when he turns.
So exactly. So he was so impressed that it was done in camera that he wanted to do it for Fright Night. So he did a retractable pencil, same thing with the pencil out the other side of the hand, had someone pull it out so he could turn his hand this way and that without a shot. He said he goes into the editing room to watch a cut and he stabs it in and then it cuts to the face of someone else reacting. And then he pulls it out and it's gone. He's like, you ruined the whole trick. He's like, you can't cut to something else. It's got to be continuous to be convincing. But anyway, very excited about those effects. So I just thought I'd throw that one in there.
Now, this is so cool because they did shoot on location of this castle, but everything that's in this castle was brought by Werner Herzog or built by the prop guys. The clock on the wall is a real clock. It is a memento mori clock. For those of you who don't know what memento mori is, always remember death. Death comes for everyone. And so this clock is great because it's got a skull that opens on the top and a little skeleton pops up. Then it closes and then the doors open and death comes out with his scythe.
Now, wouldn't memento mori in Italian be remember love?
No, it's amore.
That would be amore.
Gotcha. Now, going back to that other shot, though, you see Herzog really trying to pay homage to the expressionism, even though the angles of I assume that's an actual building, not a set.
It is.
But he still brings in all this ironwork and projects shadows through it, all these curling shapes. And Expressionism was all either curling shapes or jagged angles. So, you know, you can tell
you'll see some of that like in Beetlejuice, the fireplace at the end.
Oh, everything, the hallways,
and the creature, everything just goes angles.
Yeah, Tim Burton was heavily inspired by that. But when you go back to the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, even one of the things on the sets, they shaped the blades of grass on the sets as sickle blades, because they wanted everything to be uncomfortable, like you were going to, you know, like the world around you was dangerous. You could, and Tim Burton, when he explained Nightmare Before Christmas aesthetic to his set builders, said, he's like, everything has to look like if you ran your hand across it, it would be ripped to shreds. So that was kind of.
You never cut your finger on a blade of grass, man?
Yes, I have actually.
I haven't. How did you manage that?
Oh no, certain grasses gives you like paper cuts. It's razor sharp.
Oh yeah, look, in the Army, I watched a guy get. It was really wrong what these drill instructors did to this guy. We nicknamed him New York. He was a mouth. He had a mouth on him. Got himself into trouble all the time. And they did grass drills with him in the tall grass. None of it had been mowed. And he had cuts all over his body by the time he was done. And then after they did this to him, they kicked him out of the Army.
There was when they were shooting the X-Files movie, there was a scene where Duchovny and what's her name, Anderson, were running through a cornfield, and it was a real cornfield, and nobody thought or knew that corn leaves could give you cuts as well.
Yeah, I grew up in the farm district. I got the shit cut out of me.
So they did all these shots of them running through cornfields, and they said by the end of it, they had all these cuts on their faces and hands and that sort of thing, because they didn't realize running through cornfields would shred you. So
absolutely.
You know.
So I want to point out, I paused this for a reason, because what he did in this scene, it really impressed me. He never stops looking at Jonathan Harker. And everything he physically does in this scene, he does without looking. And it's very creepy the way he does it.
It's another beautiful interpretation of the novel. In the novel, he is Dracula's attention to him is laser focused to the point where Harker feels like he's, you know, being seen through. So I think that's Herzog really kind of trying to bring the show don't tell into these moments.
He's confusing him to the point where he cuts his finger with a fucking butter knife.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how distracted do you need to be?
He just cut himself with a fucking butter knife, because that's what he's cutting the bread with. He's cutting bread with a rounded fucking butter knife. Here's the clock. That fucking clock is crazy.
Don't call the asylum, but I really like that clock.
Yeah, and it's and here comes death with the fucking sky, and then it's like, it's midnight. He says, "I never eat after midnight." It's like, okay, what are you, fucking gremlin?
I really liked in the Midnight's Edge documentary when Andre goes through all the tropes of vampires, and then he's like, not eating after midnight. Oh wait, wrong species. That cracked me up.
There's and I don't know if Tom's on at the moment, he's muted, but I'm just curious what, with these Midnight Edge retrospects, did those start with the desire to do Nosferatu, do a kind of a refurnishing? What would you call it? It's updating, but not a, there's a word for it that is eluding me.
Remastering of sorts.
Yeah, remastering.
Revisioning of the music, because trying to make it actually closer to what the original version was as far as visually. As far as what was the inspiration for doing all that, it's kind of something that's been in the wings for a while. Like we did a deal for like Zorro a while back that was public domain. And I dropped some things on After Dark for public domain stuff. So it's always been kind of something we've been working into. And also at the same time, a desire to kind of get back to our roots of what we kind of got into this for in the first place. And I would cover the darker, edgier kind of genre fare. And Nosferatu just seemed like the perfect launch for it.
Exactly.
When I mentioned it to Andre, he was like, "That's brilliant." Yeah.
Are you guys going to do a Blu-ray release? Because that's definitely something I would like to own.
That has been in the cards. It's something we're definitely looking into. We're just first of all, we've got our daily routines to get through, and then there's a guy I've been talking to about actually doing the menus and all that kind of business. So we're still in the process of all that kind of stuff. And then we need to decide and gauge how much interest there is in it for will we have to have it manufactured by some company, or will this guy that does the menus for us be able to handle the demand on his own? So yeah, there's a few steps we got to get to, but it's definitely on the horizon and something we want to do in the first quarter of this year, if not first half of this year, probably.
Yeah, I remember back in the 2000s, I'd done quite a few DVDs, but I'd never done the Blu-rays, and I don't know what's required for making those menus. For this scene right here, Tom, did you notice that in the opening scene, you have a slow motion image of a vampire bat, and it is a vampire bat. This is not. This is a fruit bat.
Fruit bat, yeah.
Yeah, the way you can tell is one looks like a fox and the other one looks like a pug-faced fucking monster with fangs.
Fruit bats are adorable.
You just want to hug them. Vampire bats, don't hug them. They will fucking find a bite. They're like mosquitoes, and they're terrible down in Mexico and parts of Central and South America because they wreak havoc on livestock.
Yeah, it's actually in the original Dracula novel, Quincy Morris, when they've realized that they're confronting a vampire, and he tells a story about a vampire bat draining, it's kind of
the horse. Yeah.
I
remember that story. It's a great story.
It's kind of funny though, because the way he describes it is as if one bat drained the entire horse, which would be impossible. But yeah, it's a Bram Stoker again, who, man, the characters are so great. It's really been underrated. Like even the Francis Ford Coppola, I feel underutilized Quincy Harker, Homewood, and
he should have pushed the envelope and done a director's cut and shot all of the good scenes and made a 4-hour movie.
Well, again, I'm working on a script at the moment, which I think will be because I think this, this is going to sound insane, but there's even elements of Dracula in the Lord of the Rings trilogy in terms of what the Fellowship is. Now I'm making that connection.
You're making a connection with Sauron.
I'm making a connection more with the friendship bonds between the Fellowship.
How they go to fight. Yeah, we've all become God's madmen. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's in the book.
And that's set at a different point, by the way, in the book.
That's the second act. There's a very distinct three-act structure to Dracula.
As I recall, that is said after the killing of Lucy.
Yeah, that's the killing of Lucy is a very important, spiritually and symbolically is a very important moment in what Bram Stoker is trying to accomplish. And I don't think any movie has truly captured it yet, because a lot of people are, they're trying to translate it into Hollywood fare. Nosferatu is actually better for the 90-minute structure because it's much more pared down and simplified. In my mind, there's 3 versions of Dracula that are the most distinct. There's the novel, there's the play, which is actually closer to what the Bela Lugosi movie is, and then there's Nosferatu, who takes it in a different direction, but still manages to do something very engaging and compelling, which is why I like it. For me, the black and white one is still the most fascinating, and I haven't seen the Robert Eggers or Ayers, however you say it, one yet.
Oh, you got to see it, dude. You've got to see it.
I've got to be honest with you, though. That guy is 0 for me in terms of every movie that everyone tells me.
He's done 2 movies I've liked so far. I liked his Telling of Amleth with the Northman. The Northman. And I like this film, Nosferatu. Past that, I couldn't stand The Witch. I didn't think it was very good at all.
The Witch.
Tom, if you're still here, Courtney is saying that she wants an official release of Baby You Look Good on Me. I've actually never heard this song, and it's upsetting.
Maybe if I'd actually sold enough singles of it, maybe. I don't know. That'd be a big endeavor for money-wise. I'd probably lose my shirt on that one.
Yeah, you should maybe do print on demand on some of that so people can order.
I don't know if you can do that with records.
I think there is a print on demand for vinyl. I think I even saved it. I'll get it for you after the show.
There's
vinyl and CDs.
There's a lot of people doing vinyl these days. Tom, just a quick follow-up though. One other thing I wanted to ask is, have you guys considered also getting your Nosferatu onto video on demand? Because, I know YouTube is very accessible for most people, but there are other versions of Nosferatu on demand that are essentially somebody just took it and, through the black and white, didn't do anything to improve it or to work on the quality. But I've got my movie on Tubi, Apple TV, that sort of thing.
Yeah, which is where I saw it first, was on Tubi.
Yeah, I'm sure though that people would want to see it on demand as well. I don't know.
Absolutely, I agree.
I would.
Before you go,
but yeah.
I just wanted to mention that this is what we talked about earlier. Is now we see the same shot of the sea. He's alone, and it's fogged in, giving a completely different feel to the ocean now.
Gorgeous.
And then later we see the same spot with no water, where obviously the tide has gone back and it's dry, and we're seeing dust flowing over. I'm telling you, Herzog did an amazing job with his cinematography in this. And I think he was his own DP. I think he was the director of photography on his films.
Where were these beach shots done? Because, if you, like I said, I was born in England. This looks like English beaches to me, like that they always have that eerie kind of cold, foggy look to them.
Well, I know that some of it was shot in Holland, some of it was shot in Germany, and some of it in Czechoslovakia. So my guess is this is probably somewhere in Holland.
Holland or Germany, because if the tide goes out that far, that's up the north coast of Europe.
Yeah, it's clearly Northern Europe with the way it looks. And by God, those things hanging there, I don't know what the fuck those are. They look like little bats hanging on the window.
Yeah.
I do love him trying to escape that castle. It's very reminiscent to Jonathan Harker trying to get out of the castle in Bram Stoker's Dracula. And I do believe it was influenced a lot by this film.
Well, again, with Herzog, he's going to do a lot of things that are subliminal on the periphery of your vision. Lots of shapes that are suggestive.
There's shit that you miss all the time in his films.
Yeah, and as far as Jonathan Harker escaping, again, that's most of the first act of Dracula is just him and Dracula alone in a castle, which they riff off of that in the play, and that becomes more of it. I mean, it's like, for the play, it's kind of like the first act is Jonathan Harker in the castle. The second act is kind of a lot of drama around the fainting couch, and then from there it kind of falls apart, because the idea of chasing him through Transylvania is just, how do you do that on stage? So they kind of have to just go to Carfax Abbey and hunt him down there. But anyway, go ahead.
But this is, he's doing the whole diatribe where he's talking about Jonathan Harker says something. He goes, aging is nothing. He says, can you imagine enduring centuries? And the thing is when you see the film, I just forgot the name of it, with where it's the making of Nosferatu with Malkovich and Willem Dafoe.
Oh, Shadow of the Vampire.
Shadow of the Vampire. I fucking love that movie so fucking much. And he even says in the film, I don't even know. I don't remember how I was made.
Now just going to that movie for a second. When I watched it, I thought it was meant as a stealth comedy, but other people tell me that it's supposed to be taken seriously. But there's like
it is a comedy. They're full of shit.
Yeah,
it's meant to be funny. It's very dark comedy, but it is comedy nonetheless.
When he grabs the bat out of the air, after giving that speech, and then walks off, and they're just looking at him going like, what an actor. It was just hysterical.
An actor. It's so fucking funny. He's like gnawing on that thing like Ozzy Osbourne, But Tom's other song, Safe for CMT Country Music, keeps popping up on YouTube. Must suggestions. I love that. I like that. I'm curious, has my music been popping up for you guys at all?
On YouTube?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. I saw when you released, but
they're not doing their job, man. I'm telling you.
Don't listen to me though. I've been so kind of wrapped up in my animation. That's why I've been so MIA. It's like I'm really trying to focus in on what I'm doing. So like I'm the last person you want to ask.
There's 3 songs in particular I think that you would find use for, and you are welcome to use them. I will give you the license rights to do it.
See, where do I listen to your music? Is it on YouTube or you got it on Spotify?
Yeah, wait.
I share it all the time.
I have some of the links.
Do you have my email? Send it to me in my email.
Speaking of, I think we need a musical version of Nosferatu.
Oh yeah, Nosferatu. Yeah. Very Gregorian.
There is a musical. It's German, okay, but it's very beloved over here in Europe.
Oh, really?
Tanz der Vampire. Yeah, Tanz der Vampire.
Did I know that?
Oh, yeah. It's also, there was a musical of
hold on, Gerry.
The film that you mentioned, and hold on, it was, honey, come on.
I just wanted
there is a movie that was mentioned in Andre's in your documentary.
The Fearless Vampire Killers that was called Dance of the Vampires originally, yeah.
Yes, the original film, Dance of the Vampires, and they turned it into a German musical. But I wanted to point out, I want to do a retrospective on that film because I was 5 years old when I saw that movie, and it blew my fucking mind.
I was so happy to see you guys mention that because I thought every time I brought up that movie, everyone goes like, I've never heard of that one. And I'm like, first of all, there are shots of Sharon Tate that make you really angry that Charles Manson and his family got a hold of her because what a waste.
So beautiful, dude.
Like
she really was. And she was good in this film. I love that it has a very similar ending to it that this film does. So you can tell that Werner Herzog had an influence from that film because everything that's in the vampire lore that he uses is from this movie.
That's well, Tom, isn't that the retrospective? You guys make that connection too, don't you?
Yes, they did. So. And I feel like I'm one of the few people that even like that movie, The Fearless Vampire Killers or the Dance of the Vampires. I fucking love that movie since I was 5, man. And when I was a young adult, I couldn't find it. And then finally, a friend of mine from Germany had a copy of it and made a copy on VHS for me.
Yeah, my friend Dave had a bootleg of it, and we would watch it at his house. It was definitely, I just kind of, it still had that Hammer horror aesthetic.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it was really great. And and
it has a down ending because as they escape, she's actually been turned into a vampire, not saved, and she bites the young hero, played by Polanski. And the old guy's completely unaware, he's running the wagon. By the way, there's the link to the playlist of all songs on my album. And what happens if you go to YouTube to listen to it for free? Please make sure you don't have an ad blocker on because I get paid by that ad. I get 1 penny per play plus 1 penny per like.
The ads in the moment on YouTube. I don't have an ad blocker because I couldn't.
All you got to do is wait until it gets that part and then you hit skip and I still get paid.
Something about YouTube ads. I get an ad every 60 seconds on pretty much everything I listen to.
Depends on what video you're at. And I think they sign up for that shit.
Oh, man.
Mine isn't. It's like I think mine is 1 ad per 3 songs.
All right, I'm copying that link right now. I'm putting it.
And I have a song that's not available publicly yet because I haven't officially released it. I'm actually going to make some changes to it. Very little. I'm going to add some more guitar to it. Is my song "In the Flesh," which is a really creepy fucking song. Anima, what did you think of that song?
Which one?
In the Flesh.
Wow, love the Magritte inspired album cover.
I told you this needs to be the title of that album because that song, man, it creeps.
It is. They voted into Flesh.
Good.
My next album, which will come out in fall, probably around September, because most of the music's already done. It's just I have to go back and really make sure I'm happy with everything in them. I have a friend that was like, "You need to do this, you need to do that to your music." I'm like, "I love you, man, but don't tell me what I need to do to my fucking music. I'm not trying to write hits. I'm trying to write good music that I like."
Well, I don't want to give too much away, but In the Flesh is a revenge song, and fuck, it's cold. It's
creepy because it's a ghost story.
Every time I listen to it, yeah. It's a ghost story, and it's about...
You're not giving anything away. It's a ghost story where a guy possesses the woman that murdered him.
I just want to respond to this. What was that last comment that came up? Nosferatu rubs people the wrong way. Nosferatu. Nosferatu could, yes. And Sharon Tate as a vampire could rub me the right way.
That's all I can say to that. Yeah. What's this? Gerry missed my drummer dig. Oh, let me tell you, Brian got one in when he did a review of my song. At the very bottom of his review video, it says, now I need to make a clarification here. When I said Gerry's a musician, he's just a drummer.
Yeah, bass players get the same.
Well, I play like piano too. You know, nobody remembers that.
His exact wording was, "When I refer to Gerry as a musician, he's actually a drummer."
Actually,
love
a drummer.
Brian, keep it coming. He needs that.
I love
Brian.
You know, Herzog had such an eye for locations too. He really could, you know.
Well, I couldn't believe he got away with what he did here with this boat, because when it's going up that canal, it's by itself, and it actually like runs into the side of the dock, which is also the street. It's such a bizarre scene, and it's creepy as fuck.
Guy that had people carry a boat across the jungle.
Yes.
Fitzcarraldo. I love that movie.
That was amazing what they did with that.
Now, I play bass as well.
Well, I have found in bands almost consistently that the bassist and the drummer get along, because we're the foundation of the music, and we kind of go off in our own little click, whatever you want to call it, and we just sort of ignore the singers and the lead guitarists, because they're usually like the biggest pains in the asses ever when I'm in a band. I've only been friends with one rhythm guitarist.
It's the equivalent of writers in Hollywood. Everyone makes fun of the writer. There's a joke saying, "Did you hear about the dumb actress trying to get ahead in Hollywood? She slept with the
writer." Yeah, I know that joke. It's a great joke. Now I love that they kept the cemetery in here, because that's in the original film and it's also in the new film.
This is the thing about most vampire movies that, you know, people try and do the cash grab vampire movies that really bugs me is they just go for the title and the plot line, and they don't go for the aesthetic. That, you know, the graveyard to me is such a beautiful and you know, it's a character in every vampire story. You have to see the graveyard on the hill. It's you know, because what are you doing? This graveyard is overlooking the ocean where the vampire is coming, and you know, you meet him in the graveyard, so to speak. It's and it's in, you know, the British locations, again pointed out in the Midnight's Edge retrospectives, are real locations, and they, you know, they mean something to the English people. They mean something to that novel.
Oh, good night, Matt.
Night, Matt. In Croatia, they have a lot of graveyards overlooking the sea, and it's just to give the ones who passed away the most beautiful resting place that they can. And these places are gorgeous.
Indeed, yes.
I mean, they could turn them into property and sell it and have people build houses there, but they decide to keep it, and thank God they do.
Yeah, that's the plot of Poltergeist.
Yep. By the way, I have that movie, Nosferatu in Venice. I have never watched it.
Neither have I.
Because it's not an official sequel, but because Klaus Kinski is in it and he has the two rat teeth. Here's the scene I'm talking about, where it just, like, hits this fucking side and
Look
comes
at
to
that,
a
Gerry.
stop. What?
Did you see what Sander says? That's his hometown we're talking about right now.
This place
That's
is?
awesome.
Yep.
Wow.
Because that's also where they shot the original Nosferatu.
What I found weird is that they go on board when there's no sign of life and go investigate. They would have pushed that boat back and burned it in times of the plague.
Now, I want to point out
have.
again, Gambit, that Isabelle Adjani actually did say her lines in German, but she was doing phonetic German and it didn't work. So they hired a German voice actress to dub Isabelle Adjani into German. And it's so weird because in the American film, many of the cast were dubbed. The three that were not were Bruno, Werner,
Kinski?
and I mean, not Werner. Kinski and Isabelle Adjani were all fluent in English. So in the dinner scene between Nosferatu and Jonathan Harker, Dracula and Harker, they did the scene in English as well, and they both did their lines very well. A lot of the other actors had trouble with the English, didn't sound quite right, were hard to understand, so they got dubbed.
This is a scene that to me is so chilling as well, and the idea that they made a Voyage of the Demeter movie, just and
they sank that movie.
Oh god,
it was so bad.
It's so simple, but
how do you screw up something so simple?
I wanted to say something about the name of that boat, because renaming it to Demeter is so ironic, because that boat brings death, and Demeter is the Greek goddess of youth and fertility.
And of course, the original ship in the true story was the Dimitri, and I think it was smart on Bram Stoker's part to switch it and change it to Demeter.
Well, this is
for that reason.
Anima, that's a very good point, because that is the idea of this this force, this foreign essentially invader coming for the youth of the world, that death is indiscriminate, and by letting your guard down, and this is, I think, one of the important lessons of Dracula, and something that in the world right now we are experiencing to the detriment of our young people, especially in England, is when you let your guard down, when you stop believing that there is good and evil, and you start thinking of it in terms of gray areas, you're unable to identify evil. And if you can't identify evil, then you're holding the door open for it. And who suffers for that? I mean, this is the complaints I have about my home state of California, is it's run by people who hold the door open for these catastrophic things to start happening. It's a criticism. It's Bram Stoker's criticism of the Enlightenment era, and why it's so important that the story of Dracula is not made a secular one. It is a very religious Christian story.
Absolutely, which is my one nitpick with the new film.
Yeah,
which is the new Nosferatu is secular in its production.
That's
religion
ridiculous.
plays no part in it.
It's a demon movie. It has nothing to do
Yeah.
with vampires.
In the new
really.
film,
But-
religion, it does
Yeah,
technically, but it's more of a. It actually takes it back to the original film, because the original film is more about modern beliefs clashing with the old way of thinking, like the old world, right? Like the Victorian era clashing with this idea that human sacrifice, good and evil, all that kind of stuff. It gets more into that, to where this is kind of a more straightforward Dracula story. Like you guys were talking a little bit before about his origin, right? Like in this movie, they don't really specify, but it pretty much, you got to figure he just was bitten by a vampire at some point and became a vampire himself, or the standard Dracula background, because he ends up turning Jonathan into a vampire in this version, right? So that's what happens to Jonathan. In the other version, that has nothing
and that
to do
comes
with anything.
straight. That comes straight out of that film we talked about earlier. The Fearless Vampire Killers, because that's where that got started. But I do want to point out, because I'm glad you brought up
in the original version, Belial, he's a
Belial is a demon.
Yeah, he was either the offspring of, or he got in touch with him and he's been corrupted by whichever one it was. And
see, we need Ridley Scott to tell that story.
Well, look, I want to point out something very important about the 1922 film.
God, please no.
Henrik Galeen is the screenwriter, and the producer, what's his name, Albin Grau. Both
they
of
were
them
all
were
a bunch of cult worshippers.
They were Satanists. They actually were Satanists. They say a cult to be polite, but the fact is they were downright worshippers of Satan, and they were the ones in charge of making the movie. And so that's why they went away from the creation from the vampire point of view to more of the demonic side of things.
And that's why the Eggers version really leans into, to where this version leans more into the vampire. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of, I have to say, there's still a lot of satanic stuff in Hollywood. And I'm telling you, as somebody who came out of Hollywood, so they're going to be.
That's why I stay working on the peripheral, because I had my taste of Hollywood, didn't like it, and I'm like, I want no part of this. I want to work on films, but I don't want to work with some of these fucking people. So that's why I'm so blessed to work for Dale Dye. I really am.
I've heard stories that'll make your skin crawl, but it does go all the way back to the early days of cinema. And Tom, you probably know about this too, but Hollywood kind of coming from vaudeville. Vaudeville was essentially a human trafficking operation where they just go from town to town, put on these performances, and then people would be like, yeah, that woman that was singing on stage, how much to have the night with her? That like,
right.
And that was kind of, and they justified it by being godless, by being occult and satanic. It was, it's goes way back, and to see it reflected in these movies, I think both by people who have experienced it and want to kind of stealth tell on it, to people who want to kind of mix it in. I'm still on the fence, and maybe Tom, you have some info on this, because you did bring up Roman Polanski a lot in the retrospect, but I'm still on the fence about Roman Polanski. Is he a Satanist himself, or is he telling on the Satanists with movies?
I do believe I believe he got into it for a while, and it got him into trouble. You know what happened in '77. I think that hanging out with that crowd got him into trouble, and he fled this country, and he's probably left some of it behind, but I think you see influences from it in his movie with Johnny Depp when he's a book detective looking for books.
That's the Ninth Gate. Yeah, I love that movie.
The Ninth Gate.
My theory is
evil wins. Evil wins. He in his stories, evil always wins.
My theory is that probably he did get involved with it, and it broke him when Sharon Tate died. And I thought that was good that Andre brought that up in the retrospect as well. That
Ditto.
He's
because
a broken
I've
person.
said that for years, that I think that he lost connection. But now, word has come out that I found very troubling. I'm sure Tom's heard of this too, that there was footage found during the investigation that was mentioned in the book in, I think, 2019, that footage that was found was finally identified as pornographic film that Polanski had shot of him having Sharon Tate have sex with other guys, and maybe even forcing her to have sex with other guys. And that's in the latest book about the Helter Skelter investigation. It's one investigator who made enemies with the lead investigator from the Helter Skelter crimes, the DA that prosecuted.
That would be congruent with the stories that I would hear other people tell in Hollywood.
Oh, I absolutely believe this stuff. So I think they were already getting into him the minute he got to Hollywood.
Yeah. So, there is bad juju there. And, I left for a reason.
Bro.
Some of it was economic, but some of it was like, as I wanted to make my movies, people be like, oh, you got to go and, essentially.
Scientology is nothing but a copy of what Hollywood was already doing.
That was like competition, so. But,
it is. But they're echoing what they do with how they build their business as a church is the way Hollywood works.
With that, I have to beg off here. I am got.
Are you on the Nostromo right now? I'm just wondering because you have your Nostromo hat.
Right. Yeah, this was given to me by an animator that I'm working with on my project, and he's got a great project called the Fall of Hammerdome, which he has on YouTube. Very talented guy.
For work rendered.
I will accept Aliens merch, but you guys, it's lovely always being, and I'm sorry I'm such a stranger.
I'm glad you dropped in, dude. I'm glad I got a hold of you today.
It's don't take it as anything more than I am making an animated movie by yourself takes super focus. So I'm not avoiding you guys. I'm just trying to really.
I know you're busy, man. Don't you?
Yeah.
I recognize that as a person who's busy myself. There are times when I don't want to do anything because I'm busy with other shit. So don't worry about it, man. I get it. So do me a favor. Shut the fuck up and get out of here. I love you, man.
I want to plug something really quick, though. I have
no sex.
Not that kind of plug.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Your back door is safe, Gerry.
Boy, is it ever. I have a sci exploitation YouTube channel in addition to the Christopher Moonlight Productions YouTube channel, where it's all things for Escape from Planet Omega 12. I'm doing behind the scenes and tutorials, as well as I will be releasing.
Did you share it with Martin?
No, I didn't, but
so he can share it out, for God's sakes, put it in the private chat. Oh my God.
You're making me like
walk. Is this like the first time you've ever done this?
An animated movie?
No, coming on a show and talking about something you're doing and not sharing your fucking links.
What do you think? I'm some sort of narcissist or something? No, just kidding. Of course,
don't answer that.
There you go. Yeah, it's essentially, like I said, I'm very excited about this. I'm mixing traditional animation with practical effects, miniatures, and puppets, and AI in a style that is very much my own style, like nothing you've ever seen before. And it's got everything that, I made this movie because I saw what Disney was doing and Paramount were doing with the beloved franchises that we like so much, like Star Trek, Star Wars, and the Alien franchise, combining it with my love of old stuff like Robinson Crusoe on Mars and Forbidden Planet. It's science fiction for fans that
very cool.
So I'm making this for the fans that have felt that their goodwill has been cast aside. We're gonna make science fiction great again.
You'd take a hell of a long time to say goodbye.
And I have to pee too, so all right, you guys, take care. Love you all. Love to the chat, and see you next Tuesday.
See you, brother. Have a good one.
Don't trust the Android.
Don't trust the Androids. Oh man. I swear to God, man, I love Chris, but boy, he gets long-winded sometimes.
Look who's talking.
I know. I'm saying that.
Okay. And now my 2-hour discussion on
yeah, I forgot you were even here, Steven.
Kubrick, The Occult, and Eyes Wide Shut. Thank you. I just wanted to get that dig in there.
No, it's fairly accurate. Kubrick kind of stayed out of Hollywood by living in the UK, never coming back here. I sometimes wonder if it was his phobia or if he just wanted to get the fuck away from Hollywood. So, but I stopped at this scene for a second because this is where Jonathan doesn't even remember his wife. Who is this?
That's because he's becoming a vampire now,
Yeah, but it's heartbreaking. She gets called to the door and it's finally him again. And he pushes her away and asks the other people, who is that woman? That must break her heart in that moment.
Yeah, but it also, in a way, I know this is kind of sad to say it like this. It almost gives her character an out to be able to sacrifice herself because she already lost.
She lost everything, yeah.
Yeah, so like, I mean, in a sense, like, it's kind of a cheap thing to do, but in a way, it's like, what do you do with this character? Because that's kind of the problem with the first film is like, it's hard to believe that Orlok would beat him there by that much. Because if you remember the original film, he just happens to get there just at the moment that all this shit is happening.
Yeah, because people don't understand, he has to go all the way down around the southernmost part of Europe, Portugal and all that. You go around that all the way up to the German coast, or in Dracula, the European England coast. But either way it goes, that's a long fucking trip by ship. And that's why in the new film, Tom, and you bring that up, and I love that, is that he gets there quicker. He gets there just
same here, yeah.
Shit happens.
And here they just have it like he's gradually turning into a vampire. So just as he's getting there, he forgets who he is. But then in that sense, then it's just kind of leaves his character like, what do you do with him? Because he's here now, right? So
and
this is probably my least favorite version of that. And I don't want to like shit on the movie we're watching here, but like I have the most issues I have with any of the Nosferatus, it's this one. And it's mainly just because of the stuff they changed and the stuff that they tried to turn
and
more
what
back
they do with
Dracula.
Harker, because Harker
yeah.
He's nothing now. He doesn't have anything to do with the plot until the very end.
Because in the original, at least he was just getting there too late. In the new version, they do it much better, in my opinion, in how they handle his character and what he does and what he represents. Because, I mean, it really, really dives deeper into the original kind of film more so, to where this one, again, like we were just kind of saying, Chris was kind of getting at, it's like this one is more and more they can make it like Dracula they tried to where even up till the ending, which is basically the same, but at this point, you know, Jonathan's just kind of out for the count because he's a vampire too, basically.
Yep.
And she's just
a tool.
One, yeah. She's a tool, whereas in a new movie, she's a character.
Yeah, and also in this one, she's a target. Because once again, here's that thing, and I'm glad that Andre brought this up too, is that Kinski and Werner had thought about it, that the hands, the way he holds his hands, is specifically to look like a spider in the web, just relaxed, as he's trapping his victim slowly. And I thought that was very mentally a great idea, because it works, because his hands are disturbing, the way he moves them and holds them when he's talking.
And he's always moving them.
You don't think what, Tom?
I'm trying to remember, because it's been a couple months since I've watched this one. Do they have her getting sick through the first part of this too, or no in this one?
No. That is not in this version.
I would say they take that out, because that's one thing I do like about how the new version handled that, because it is in the original version, but it's not really expressed exactly what's going on. Is like, because she's producing an extreme amount of blood. And it's like her body's doing it on purpose, preparing her for this night, basically, is what it is.
She's connected to him in the new one. She's connected to him. And this one, she just has...
Yeah, she had mistakenly become possessed.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing in the original, though, is like, as soon as there's this connection between them is when she falls ill. And what she's got a congestion of blood, which means she has too much blood. So that means what she's doing is her body's producing more blood than she can contain. So basically preparing her to take out Nosferatu, basically, is what it's doing. So it's like meant to be is what it's saying. You know what I mean? Like in this version, it's just kind of more, again, in line with the Dracula thing. But yeah, she doesn't get nearly as much character. She just wanders around a lot in this version. It's just kind of like, she doesn't really do much.
Well, and part of the reason she was hired, and I brought this up earlier, is she has a natural look of being haunted. And Dracula-ness is kind of a ghost. He, that was part of his direction from Werner, is that, you're like a ghost walking around the living. And then you got, Adjani playing a character she's always haunted looking. So it's just a weird, ghostly, haunting film. I have a problem. I have the same problem you do with Harker, because Harker's just pointless until the final scene.
And it's more just for like a scare now, to where like in the original film and in this version, it's more of the tragedy of it, right? It's that what she has to sacrifice. And then even more so in the new one, it's, her own doing in a way of bringing this out and bringing it to them. And it's kind of like, because like the whole thing with the new one, I really like how they've made her character more in tune with the dark side, or whatever you want to call it, to where she's got,
she is a central character in this story, but far more so with what's her name, Depp, Rose Depp,
Lily
or whatever.
Rose, yeah.
He's far more the central character in the new film, which I think, the way that was written, she should have been. I think it was crazy not to have her as the central character, because in the end, it's all about her.
Well, in the new one, she makes this pact as a kid, so she's doomed all the way. In this one, she just gets this purpose because her man doesn't recognize her anymore, and then she stumbles across this book, and she's like, okay, this is something I can do. And I lost everything anyway. It's not a sacrifice, it's more like a way out, justifying offing herself, basically.
Yeah, and in the original one, there's this looming thing about it, and this is what was interesting about when we finally got to see the film, is like if you watch our retrospective on the original film, is how much Andre dives into this shit, and after we saw it, we're like, oh my gosh, yeah, Eggers really got it. Like, not only did he get it, he really amped it up and really put it in your face about what this story is really about, like all the themes, all the basically the sacrifice of what Ellen is doing here and what she means to this whole story. And Andre even brings up how she was kind of like this heroic feminine figure in the original film, and it's kind of overlooked in a lot of times when people bring it up. And we were both kind of thrilled to see how much Eggers really got that. And he does amp that up even more in this version, where she is not only is she the reason that Nosferatu's coming, but she knows that she's the key. And I love how they've used, Thomas in this role that she thought, subconsciously she could stave this off if she married him. And that's part of it. That's why she keeps calling his manhood into question, right?
It's also why she tries to keep him from going.
Exactly. Well, yeah, it just works perfectly in how he kind of combined it all with this idea and with the original film, and this whole like repression in the Victorian era meets the idea of, old beliefs, and blood sacrifice and, that kind of stuff, and he should understand it almost. And that's kind of how it's set up in the movie, because he sees that ritual that they go out and they send the virgin out to find the vampire, right? Because most people don't understand what's happening in that scene. What's happening in that scene is the villagers are basically baiting out a vampire. They think they're sacrificing her. No, they're not. They're baiting out the vampire. But what she does is the ultimate sacrifice, right? She sacrifices herself to end the plague. So like, that's where you see him. And that's why I kind of like the extended version a little bit more that's out now, because there's actually more of that scene where he's questioning Orlok on their
Wait a minute, extended version of which?
The new Nosferatu.
What?
What?
Yeah, you guys didn't know that? Yeah, the 3 minute.
No.
It's like 3 minutes longer. And
fuck off! Oh my god!
Yeah,
we need that, Martin. We need it.
Yeah.
And yeah, basically,
now, Tom, just want to interject this one thing. I saw a connection between Eggers' film and The Exorcist in that.
Oh, there's definitely that too.
When Regan is lonely, is when the demon worked its way into her life as Captain Howdy. And that is exactly how, Orlok did with her character at the beginning of the film, where she's just lonely and begging a guardian angel to. Well, I don't think it started out as horny. I think that she was just lonely.
Kind of it's
what's a plus?
She's out in the field, and she's laying there, and she starts making that sound. She's like, I was like,
Well, it's a little bit about the repression of the Victorian era meets, pure unbridled,
passion,
lust and passion, right? Like, and that how women were kind of being liberated, but it's kind of like a way of saying it's kind of modern in a weird way, but how with even more liberation, they're being even more repressed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and of course, in that period too, in Victorian Europe, during the Victorian period, it was very sexually repressed, especially in the United States. I think England was repressed. Come to the United States, it was much worse in the US.
Actually, what started in the Victorian era was women going to work.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah, there with more liberation came more repression. Like, that's kind of what the message is trying to say, is like, You know, they're getting out of the homes. They're not just a wife anymore. Because that's all she wants to be. Notice from the very start, all she wants to do is jump her husband. And he's like, no, I got to go to work.
And he's still late. He's still fucking late.
And he's still fucking late.
I know. He may as well have done it as late as he was.
And we don't know. Maybe he already did. See, that's the thing is she could be like a fucking nymphomaniac.
You're right. Kind of, it cuts away. You're right.
Well, I mean, they may have before or after. Like, that's the whole thing. And even when they do finally have that scene where they do fuck on screen, it is pretty intense for that very reason, because she's basically trying to get him to fuck the demon out of her. Right? Like,
yeah, that's really what she's doing.
And it's not even her that's belittling him. It's the possession. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the funny thing that just popped into my head watching that scene.
Holy shit, Stephen too.
Well, that's how he finally got her to shut up. You know? Yeah, okay. That's one way to do
Basically,
it. Basically,
that's all that movie's saying is all those women need is just a little deep dicking.
Little deep dicking. Speaking of deep dicking, Six is here.
Hi, Six.
Six.
It's been ages. Where have you been?
Well, I mean, everybody's talking about it, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to jump into it. I'll go all the way out. I'm like, fuck it, yeah, she is a nymphomaniac being repressed. That's what it's about. There you go. If that's what you want to say, go for it.
Fair enough.
Now, a lot of people don't realize what she's done. She's gone into their version of the Carfax Abbey and found his grave. And what she's doing, which I'm not sure how this is going to work because there are rats there that are going to eat this, but that is communion wafers that she's breaking up.
And they added this. This is something Herzog added to it. Yeah.
Because the rats are going to fucking eat that stuff. So I was like, but that's what she's doing. She's trying to consecrate the ground with blessed communion wafers. And,
which again, you're right. I'm surprised Andre didn't get into that a little bit more about how much this did obviously influence Egger's version, because that scene is not even in the original version as far as like it's clearly directly taken out of Dracula, and here the same kind of thing. That's probably where Herzog got it, because they don't even give a shit about his grave or anything like that, or his a coffin in the original version. It doesn't have anything, doesn't even factor into anything. But in the new version, in this one, they do consecrate his coffin, because
they show it in Bram Stoker's for sure, because they actually show him putting the wafers in it. But I do see there is a super sticker from Six. I'm assuming it's a rose for Anima. Yeah, I knew that. And then it'll be a turd for me because she likes to throw shade at me. Most people throw shade, but not her. She's more like an ape. She throws her poop at me.
Everybody gets what they deserve, Gerry.
Yes.
I know. I earn everything I get. At the request of distributor 20th Century Fox, Herzog produced 2 versions of the film simultaneously to appeal to English-speaking audiences. Yeah, because they shot most of the scenes, like this scene right here, is in both versions of the film. Because if there's no dialogue, it's in both versions. Only where they have to talk did he shoot it twice. But the interesting thing is that he actually changed the way he shot some of the scenes. So you'll see the German version, it's shot differently, that scene, because like they show more of her back in the English-speaking version when she has her final confrontation with, what's his name, the doctor, Van Helsing. They shoot the scene with her back to him a lot. We're shooting from her backside, which is nice.
They're going American style versus European style of doing movies or something to cater to the audience. I don't know, but I do know that
cool because they did the same thing with the original, and I know you guys brought that up too with the Spanish speaking version. But yeah,
I will point out too that this was something that I knew, but I love that you and Andre put that in there.
I mean,
these
Dracula,
were all white lab rats that they got for this film, and they were too white, so they sprayed them and tried to color them gray. And there was a little bit of trouble because I don't know what happened. Do you know more? Were some of the rats
some animal rights activist fucking group I think got into a tizzy about it? Because that was the thing is at this time I think it still is this way. I don't even know if you might be able to get different colored rats now, but I think back then it was like you didn't have all the animal wrangler type things you had like you do now. You just said, "Oh, we need a bunch of rats." So where are you going to get rats? that aren't
And so they
fucking
got 'em from a
like
lab.
street rats. You know what I mean? Like, so they just ordered a bunch of rats and they wound up with white lab rats. And it's like, okay, so what do we do with them? Because they're not going to be white. We need them to be like gray and whatever. So they just, I don't know if they spray painted them or tried to dye them or how they did it. But as far as I know,
well, there was
no
some
reports
spraying.
of any. Yeah,
There
like as
was
far as
some
I know,
spraying, but
none
I
of them
don't
were harmed or
think he
killed
was
or
dyed.
died, and they
Yeah.
actually found each and every one of them when they wrapped.
Yeah,
So.
not one rat was harmed in the making of this film. That's what Werner said. But I do want to point out, this is the Last Supper scene you and I were talking about earlier. And it's such a weird scene. And you know what it reminds me of?
Cool. It's probably one of the coolest scenes in the whole movie in a weird way.
In a weird way. And it really echoes again in another film by Francis Ford Coppola, Apocalypse Now Redux. And the dinner scene on that French plantation. This scene kind of reminds me of that for some weird reason.
I just like how it's just this idea that they've just accepted their fate. And they're gonna have,
in the
like
middle
you said,
of all
the
this
final
shit.
supper, the whole party, the people are dancing, and
I mean, there's coffins all around that nobody thinks that's strange because it's become part of the life.
It's not that they don't think it's strange. It's they've given up. And that's what this is. And it reminds me of that dinner scene on that plantation, rubber plantation, in the middle of a fucking war. And it's like this oasis. It's, I don't know. The two scenes
they're
remind
just
me of
letting the
each other.
food being crawled over by like the rats and everything, and they're not even just they're just
Just don't even
completely
care.
Yeah, they've accepted their fate basically at this point. It's kind of what it is.
There's nothing left. You get that. There's no police, there's no city council, there are no guards at the prison, nothing. It's anarchy,
Good comparison.
chaos.
Hell in place. Mad Hatter's Tea Party. There you go.
In a way, yes, but it's kind of the Last Supper thing is kind of more of what it's about. Like
It is the Last Supper. And then the table's empty. And that's what that tells you is they're dead.
Yeah, we just caught that in the subtitle. We've all got the plague, so let's enjoy the time that we still have. They are doomed. And they know it, so.
Oh, it says that in the subtitles?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I didn't catch that.
It's in a dialogue or the voiceover. We've all got the plague, so let's enjoy the time that we have, something like that.
See, I don't think they
say
said that in the American
Garrett.
version. I've only seen the American version, so I don't know. Yeah.
They do. Yeah, it's there.
Well, this is the English version that we have for the slideshow. And they didn't change the script between German and
I didn't
English.
catch it. I didn't have the
French,
subtitles
maybe.
on, so yeah. That's what sucks about the Blu-ray of this is like the German version looks okay, but the American version is really rough scan. It looks like hell.
Really? Oh,
that's too bad.
Well, Shit Factory is supposed to be doing a 4K of this, so we'll see.
I love that you don't like them too. I can't
Those
stand
dirty
them.
bastards. That's
I
their own
can't
fault.
stand them.
They
you know, I'm friends with Frank DeLuca, the guy who directed Lady in White, and they put the Blu-ray out, the Blu-ray of it, and he said it's so stupid what they did. It's terrible.
Well, now that other company has them because I got it now because it was out of print for the longest time.
What Lady in White?
Yeah, now
and it's a great film.
Out. Yeah,
and if you ever want him to come on, I will connect you with him. He is such a lovely guy. I love the dude. Been friends with him for a year, and he will shit on me. He absolutely is like great at shitting on me with his humor. I love that.
But everybody always asks me what the deal is. Okay, so this is the short version. I gave Shout Factory some bad reviews between their movies and their shipping practices and some other things, and they blocked me from ordering from their website. And they must have blocked me by IP address because I couldn't even create a new. Yeah, they've got me completely locked down. So yeah, I've had other ways I've found of ordering things when I've really wanted to, but very minimally because I used to be what you would call a whale. Like I would get almost everything, and if they had like the super special editions of shit, I would buy almost all those things. So they just done fucked up.
Well, you're a completionist, and I actually get that. I like people who are completionists.
Well, and if they have exclusives and stuff like that, I was always jumping on that kind of stuff because I know like once this stuff goes out of print that it goes up in price. I ain't gonna fucking pay that kind of money for it.
That's a good point, Courtney. That they're already in hell, the first level of hell. Because that's if you know the story of Dante's Inferno, it's referred to the world that we live in as the first level. They kind of allude to that in
Disneyland.
In Tombstone, the movie Tombstone. that's kind of alluded to in that film. That's why in that scene when they're walking to the fight at the OK Corral, they have that school house burning in the background. Is one of the visual references to the first level of hell. Yeah, and again, Bruno Ganz is a great fucking actor. And I think that he's underused. Same window, by the way. That is the same window that was used in the original Nosferatu. Difference is he has the window open. But it's so creepy the way he slowly slinks.
I do love, as far as like look-wise, I mean, Kinski is probably my favorite Nosferatu as far as all three of them. They nailed the look with this one.
And they also utilize the shadows again, because that's one of the ways he travels is through shadow. And you'll see the shadow move around, and then suddenly he's in the shadow. And
they nailed the look, and he nailed the crazy. So he's perfect.
Well, he didn't have to nail the crazy. He is crazy.
Yeah, he was diagnosed as psychopath. He was.
And I actually watched that sequel you guys were talking about before I was actually off.
Oh, Nosferatu in
yeah, it's actually not as bad as you'd think. But it's more or less just like a generic vampire movie than it is a sequel to Nosferatu in any real way. It's just, it's not like horrible, but it's not related to the original film other than having.
Well, you got Christopher Plummer, Donald Pleasance in it.
They do kind of refer to it in one scene, but it's like very vague. Like I think they bring up the plague or something like that. But that's the other thing is he doesn't even look like the only thing that looks like.
Yeah, he has hair.
He's got hair and all this other stuff. He doesn't even have the makeup on. Teeth. And that's it. That's all he's got is the rat teeth. Yep. It's even remotely close. And it's not like, so you're sitting there going throughout the film. It's like, okay, so is he supposed to be the same Nosferatu or is he just another vampire and they all look like that? Right? Because they kind of
must be Jonathan.
But yeah. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Martin.
He must be Jonathan Harker then. After he went out.
That could be. I didn't even think of that.
Okay, you know what my beef was in this scene?
Because it takes place in the modern day
Pinky's
too. That was
not up. Because Pinky should be up.
Well, he grabbed her tit too. That's the other part.
He's busy adjusting her breast.
I love how he just so nonchalantly does.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that I condone that, but I know that Anima got frustrated with me because I'm.
Well, with this one, it's kind of weird. He's got this like weird thing with him where he does it's almost like he's suckling her teat, but he's not suckling her teat. He's just suckling her blood, but he's grabbing her teat at the same time, like it. And he goes into this like baby-like trance. And in the original version, he does too, and same thing with the kind of the newer version. So like that's always part of it.
Well, the one thing he does here different is he pulls her dress up to look at her thigh.
Yeah,
and that's just really the only sexual thing about it, because the minute he begins to feed on her, it really is more of a suckling moment, like a kitten or an animal. You know,
if you close your eyes and just listen to the noises they make, especially
the noises he's making,
you know what it sounds like. I'm not going to say it, but yeah. And I hate it in the new one that he's like into her breast and drinking from that. That was like, no.
Well, what that was all about is they changed. Like well, it was clear that Eggers didn't want the neck to be the thing because that was always the thing. So what he had it is because she even does it to Thomas too, where he bites you right above the heart. So
no, yeah, he doesn't go to the throat. He sucks right from the heart. Yeah, there's the vampire bat I was talking about. That's an actual vampire bat. By the way, I owe Six a video. Here is your video, Six. Thank you so much.
What's the secret?
I don't dare tell you.
No meat. You don't eat meat.
I masturbate a lot.
Okay, I think.
I watched that live, Tom. And I laughed so I fell off the sofa. I was laughing so hard because he didn't know that the microphone was picking it up. He thought he was whispering in his fucking ear. That is so fucking funny.
There might be something to that because you ever notice those old guys who just never give it up? Who are look at Jack Nicholson's a great example. You know, he's fucking 24/7, still alive, kicking.
And by the way, the incident, if you didn't know that, Tom, with what's his name, Roman Polanski, with the young girl, the 13-year-old, that was at Nicholson's house.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Just let you know, thing is part of that circle.
that's the thing. Is like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't on that situation, because you're like, okay, it was so long ago that the statute of limitations have pretty much gone out, but he already was convicted. He just never actually.
Well, yeah, because he had
his time, so it's kind of a weird. And they did fuck him. Deal. Yeah. They did fuck him. Now, do I think he deserved that deal? Maybe not, but that's not the point. The point is they did renege on the deal. So, like, what do you do? And at that time, look, I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying it was right. I'm not saying any of that shit was proper, but it was a different time, and you had kids all over there that were that age. She was not the only one. He was not the only one. And for some reason, a lot of people overlook. You realize that every single fucking rock star you've ever loved has probably done that shit. Just think about that for a minute. In fact, people forget all the time that what's-his-face from Led Zeppelin kept a fucking teenager fucking hostage for how many goddamn years? And they never bring it up.
Never. Jimmy Page.
Jimmy Page. I was going to say, yeah, it was Jimmy Page.
Kept her in that house until she turned 18. And the minute she was legal, he kicked her out of the fucking house.
So I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just saying we've gotten to this point now where it's fucking 50 years ago. The woman has said she was part of the situation. She's dropped it all. She don't care anymore. Like, at that point, it's like, is there really a victim anymore then? If this woman is saying, let it go. Like, that's where I'm at. But at the same time, he should have to face some sort of consequences. I don't know what they should be. I'm not a judge. Like.
Yeah, it's like, and the young lady that, by the way, she's said, I forgave him a long time ago. I'm over it. I don't want to deal with this anymore. And I've always felt bad for her for that. But my problem is Roman Polanski never paid for it. And it took, 40 years before Hollywood said, well, I guess we better stop releasing his movies.
Well, and the sad part is actually it's the opposite. It's almost like a lot of them are now crying for him to let him back in and all that other kind of stuff. And it's like,
yeah.
Okay. Do I think he should be allowed back in Hollywood and be allowed to be making movies and all that kind of shit anymore? I don't know. But at the same time, should I think he should sit in prison now? Problem is, you put him in prison now, it'll kill him. He's too fucking old. But he still did it. So what the fuck? It's one of those things, like, I hate getting into it because it's such a fucking mess of a situation that the people involved have already said their piece on it. It's like, so nothing I say is going to make any difference. And it's up to a judge at the end of the day. And there's nothing I can do about it. I just think it's silly to retroactively, like, cancel his movies.
Well, yeah, look, I banned him from my TV, but there are certain films there's one film in particular after 77 of his that I did watch that I just did a show on it, is not The Fugitive, Frantic, because I fucking love that movie.
Well, and I run into it where I watch a movie of his and not realize it every once in a while too. It's just one of those things. But
it's one of those things. But I will say this, it reminds me of when I was in high school when I learned the mathematical formula of what goes into 13 twice. Do you know the answer?
Roman Polanski.
Roman Polanski. Drum roll.
Bump.
Yeah, he got confused. Fuck you, Martin.
And I'm not even going to try and get into the whole thing of whether or not 13-year-olds were much older back then and all that kind of shit too. I mean, shit.
Yeah, like all of us had little wet dreams when we were 13 as boys.
It's not just that, but I mean, like, you could get into the whole point of like, well, a 13-year-old would be getting married 200 years ago.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just.
How old was Mary in the Bible? I think she was 13.
Yeah. Something like that, yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
We've changed as a society is what I'm getting at.
I think so, because too long we were very much like what's the word I'm trying to think of, where overly religious Pentecostals are like that, where they wear bloomers that go down to their knees, the women, and it's like really fucking weird shit.
Well, and you have the other side of that. For how long was beauty products geared at trying to give the idea that you're trying to look like a teenager?
Right.
No matter how old you are, right? I mean, granted, it's just... It
still is that way.
It is. It is.
If you're female.
And I like the movie Subway, by the way, Luc Besson's Subway. It's a very good film. That's the film that introduced Christopher Lambert. So, all right, we are at the end of this movie, so I paused it so we could finish our discussion.
He's about to die.
Yeah, he's blood drunk right now. Now he looks like Uncle Fester there.
Yeah, a little bit.
No,
anybody got a light bulb?
Uncle
Hey, Gomez. I told you I was in the Army and they shaved our heads. We had this big 20-foot mirror, and all of us are like packed in there, this entire platoon, looking and rubbing our heads in the mirror. I'm giant. I'm standing over everybody. And as I looked at everybody's heads and I looked at me, how pale I was with dark rings, and I did that. I went, hey, Gomez. And about half the guys laughed. Half of them didn't know what the fuck that was. But they got the joke that we were all what do you call it? I said his name and I forgot his name. What?
Uncle Fester.
Yeah, Uncle Fester. We all look like Uncle Fester.
I love how they made, like, because I guess the biggest part of his makeup here, even though it took forever to put on, I couldn't imagine
4
having
hours.
to deal with
Every
Kinski
day.
for that long.
That was one of the reasons they could deal with Kinski, because just getting the makeup on would tire him out.
Yeah,
Well,
he would actually sleep through a lot of it too.
That's what Herzog said is, yeah.
I mean, Herzog had a gun to his head to make him stop acting out and said, your discomfort is like for a certain period of time. This movie is going to be around forever. So
it's forever. And that's something that Amelia said to Schwarzenegger.
Kill myself.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He pulled a gun out on him. He pulled a gun out on him. He says, you keep this shit up and ruin my film, I will fucking kill you. And then I'll blow my own brains out because I can't finish my movie. And for some reason, Kinski understood that. It wasn't the threat.
He is one of the only directors who's ever been able to keep him under control.
Because
absolutely,
he just kept tiring him out.
And if you watch the movie, was it called My Best Fiend?
Yeah,
I think is what it's called. Great fucking documentary that Werner made about the relationship he had with Kinski. Crazy shit.
But what I was getting at with the makeup here is I love how the ears kind of resemble a bat's ears. The little
they did that on purpose.
They
Absolutely,
yeah.
Because that's specifically the vampire bat's ears, not the fruit bat. Fruit bats look like foxes.
Exactly.
Vampire bats.
No, they actually have like the little fin in them or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
It's crazy. I love that they did the eye thing here because it's very similar to what he even did it in the new film. Eggers did.
Yeah.
Where the sunlight burns his eyes. And he's blind now. And it's fucking a great scene. Although he doesn't disappear like they did in the original film, he falls to the floor dead, and then Van Helsing shows up and says, I must put a stake through his chest to make sure it's done. But in the original Dracula's article, I'm sorry Chris couldn't stay for this whole thing. As I recall, it was an iron spike. Not a wooden
I can't
stake.
recall offhand from the book.
Like it has to stay there. You can't take it out. You spike the chest, and then you cut off the head.
Well, because the spike is supposed to spike them to the earth, right? So they can't raise again.
Yeah.
That's like part of the whole point of that. Yeah.
I remember it being iron, yeah. And I love that the sun blinds him first and then kills him. So it's twice the torture.
Yeah, you have to cut the head, stuff the mouth with garlic, and then set everything on fire.
You know, Martin, I don't need to hear about what you guys do on the weekend. That's just gross.
That's another thing too. They separated here.
See, that's why all the Vampire Singers movies always revive.
Is that the original werewolf is technically Dracula, and this and Orlok in this version of Dracula does not turn into a wolf.
Because that is in the book, by the way.
Yes.
Because there was, again, based on a true incident, a wolf that escaped a zoo. And so that became part of the plot. And the wolf was loose, and Dracula used that to attack as a wolf. And he's a shapeshifter. He became a wolf.
He's both a vampire and a wolf. Yeah.
Yep. And I thought that was really cool that they did that. Now, this is the weirdest part of the film. Because right here, all of a sudden,
Yeah,
Harker
this is
says,
where I don't like the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I dislike this part so much. He says he's committed the crime. He has killed Count Dracula. He has murdered him. Arrest him. And I'm like, that's bizarre. And it's I don't like it.
Yeah,
either.
this whole ending is just weird. I don't care for it as much.
The only part that I like it's the little sidestep Jonathan makes when the cleaning lady removes the barrier.
Clean up this mess.
Yes.
How
and
do they not pick up that something's wrong with him?
He moves sideways in a little jump, like a woo.
He looks like a corpse. How does nobody notice something is wrong with him?
Well, everybody's dying from plagues.
Yeah, I know, right? It's the plague period.
That's one reason to keep him in that fucking corner.
She says that I'm kink shaming you, Martin.
Well, here's my theory. Vampires like going to America because Americans don't know what to fucking do against them. South Americans and Europeans know. That's why vampires go to the US, because that's where they can thrive.
Okay.
You guys
I've seen enough vampire movies to know
it. I have a video for Zax.
Shut the fuck up, Kyle!
We have a bunch of those, Tom, that we play for Zax whenever he shows up.
Well, we have
Isn't that Renfield?
Now.
Yeah, well, what?
Yeah. Wasn't that from Renfield? I said, speaking of Dracula.
Oh, the movie Renfield. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. God, he looks like a rat there. Bruno does. And this is him riding off on the horse. And instead of the ocean now, you see waves of sand. And it's such a creepy scene.
Look at this.
Weird, but yeah.
I've heard this one. Egor is making a wolfman in the Middle Ages.
I would enjoy that.
I can't wait to see it.
I have a werewolf scene in my script from Jung that's based on the famous French story.
Well, did you guys see I had a leaked image of what the werewolf is going to look like, right?
No. I'm assuming this is going to be funny.
Of course. Don't ruin the joke up front, man. Now everybody's expecting it.
I love this artwork, by the way, in our background. Did you see that, Tom?
Yeah.
It's really cool artwork.
See, now it's not as funny now.
Oh, I saw this one, yes.
It's the werewolf. Starring Ron Jeremy.
It's starring the late Ron Jeremy. You know he's dead.
Did he die?
Yeah,
Did he die?
Yeah,
I thought he was in prison. I didn't know he died.
No, he got out of prison, and the dementia that he started having it while he was on trial, and it progressively got worse, and that's what killed him.
I don't think he's dead, dude.
I don't think he is.
Yeah, he's still alive.
Hey, Patron is in the house.
Now, if he dies tomorrow, we're blaming you.
Oh my God, he is alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think he's still in prison, isn't he?
I don't think so. I thought he got out.
He might be out. But...
Oh my God, read nature. Read by nature. He nails it.
Read it. I can't see it.
Werewolf Freddie Mercury.
On the point, dude. Yeah, that's what it is.
No, he was found mentally unfit to stand trial, it looks like here.
Yeah, he suffers from severe dementia.
And he was dismissed, yeah.
And this is a moral lesson for everybody. Don't fuck when you're that ugly.
What? Everybody has a right, man.
When you look like one of the like Mario, don't fuck. It's bad for you. It'll kill you. It gives you dementia. Peter Frampton, my first ex-mother-in-law, she said the funniest thing. She used to call him Little Dickie Frampton instead of Peter. Little Dickie Frampton. She had a crush on him though. So Erica Frank, it's a miracle. Where is Emmanuel? Because like Regis came here, but I haven't seen
Maybe
Emmanuel.
they're watching together and he's the only one.
You know,
I mean,
they take turns to watch the show to keep the light.
Oh, by the way, this is Brian the other night.
You feel the same way? It's just no fair making a spec for the hand of the coin. It doesn't win to nip it yet. Good?
Brian saying book. Book.
I love how he says that.
Book.
Buke. It's B-U-E-K. He spelled it out one day for us, so we knew how to pronounce it. Buke. The Scottish in words that they can't say. And it depends on what part of Scotland you're from. You know, like if you're from Inverness and then you meet somebody that's from the Highlands, they have trouble understanding each other. Perfect English. I'm sorry, English. So there you go. Any last anecdotes or anything that you can think of for this film?
No, it was we have this awesome period. And this is why I have such a hard time, or at least why I say to people I don't hate on remakes or the idea of a remake as much as most people do. But it's just the modern era is the problem. Because you go back to the 70s, we had just a bunch, 70s and early 80s especially, we had a bunch of excellent remakes. And this is just one of them, right? Like, I mean, I could sit here all day and name them up. Everything from The Thing to King Kong to this to Dracula that came out the same year with, Frank Langella. And I mean, this was just a wonderful time for film in general. And Herzog was the perfect guy to take this on. It was obvious, he was the next generation. It was perfect for him to bring this back to the zeitgeist again. I mean, most people, when they think of Nosferatu, they think of his version. So, yeah.
I'm going to play this, Tom, and I want to get your reaction to what he says. Now, I've known Mark for years. I helped him get his Blade Runner documentary done. This is his review.
My BFI Player Plus choice this week is a 1979 remake of one of the most famous films of the silent era, a movie which proves that just because something was brilliant the first time round doesn't mean it can't be added to or perhaps even improved upon by a filmmaker with a singular vision. In this case, Werner Herzog with his version of Nosferatu. F.W. Murnau's expressionist 20s horror film was essentially an uncredited adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, changing the names but retaining the details of Stoker's source. As a result, the BBFC actually banned Nosferatu in the UK after Stoker's widow threatened to sue for copyright. By the time Herzog came to remake Nosferatu, copyright on the original source was no longer an issue, so his version reverts to the original names, with Bruno Gantz's Jonathan Harker leaving behind his beloved Lucy, played by Isabelle Adjani, and travelling far to the lair of Dracula, where Klaus Kinski's vampire awaits. Herzog described Murnau's Nosferatu as the most important film ever made in Germany and saw his movie as establishing a link between the great expressionist cinema of the 20s and the German film renaissance of the 70s. He also relished the challenge of making a genre film, which required him to follow a set of rules, something he'd never done before. But most importantly, he wanted to work again with Klaus Kinski, whose bald head, bat-like ears and centrally placed fangs are clearly modelled on Max Schreck's inhuman appearance in Murnau's film, but who somehow manages to make this iconic role entirely his own. It was clear there would never be a vampire of his caliber again, Herzog said some years later, insisting that in 4 centuries to come, Kinski would still be the definitive embodiment of this mythical creature. Well, we may be only 4 decades away from Herzog's Nosferatu, but so far, Kinski still looks unsurpassable.
Now, personally, I think that he got a few of the facts wrong, but I know he got a couple of them.
Yeah, he got a few of them wrong, yeah.
But I like Mark Kermode's little quick review there because it's true. And I do think that Werner over thought it. What is going on? Is that you? Oh, wait, no, that's my video playing in the background there. I turned it off. So, because you brought up the names thing, and it's the names thing took place, and Andre and you got that right with the fact that it was nobody knew Dracula at that period of time. There was one silent film made of Dracula, and it did not do very well. There wasn't a definitive Dracula film.
As far as we know, there's still actually no proof that it actually existed, and it's Russian. So it's like, do we trust them?
Do you trust them? They could have been lying, right?
Yeah, they're just lying just because they're like.
Even though they had their own version.
First.
The Russians did have their own version of expressionism. Sergei Einstein being like the greatest Russian filmmaker at that time. But
no, it's very possible. I'm just kidding. But like, yeah, no, it's very possible because there's tons of movies from that era all the way up through like the 1940s and such where they're just lost. Completely lost for whatever reason. There's tons of reasons, but yeah.
And for some reason, Dracula worked, and I think it was their crazy marketing idea as the strangest love story and releasing it on Valentine's Day. I think that was a good marketing ploy.
Well, I guess there wasn't really quite a horror market yet. That was the other thing. Believe it or not. Like, I mean, we got to remember how early this was in filmmaking. As far as like...
Universal didn't have its Universal monsters really until the 40s. And that's when Universal realized, man, we need to make more monster movies because they
promoted the original Dracula as a romance and all this stuff.
Yeah, the strangest love story ever told. And the weird poster marketing was crazy because that's how they marketed it. And women wanted to go see it because Bella was good looking. So in a Eastern European way.
And even more so with Frank Langella, because that's exactly why that movie even exists. I don't know if you've ever heard that story, but yeah.
Yeah, but he's played him on stage. He was playing him up in New York. That was what it
was. Is the wife of Walter Mirisch, and Walter Mirisch went to see Dracula with Frank Langella at the time on Broadway, and she's like, "He is so sexy. Give him his own movie of this. You own the rights. Do it." And that's how it happened.
And what's interesting is, he has that condition called nystagmus, where his eyes vibrate. There's a few actors that have that condition. Yeah, and he in all of his close-ups in Dracula, his eyes are like doing this shit. Every close-up on his eyes, and I'm like, what's up with his eyes?
And all Langella was
comes from your inner ear, and your eyes can't focus.
Yeah. What was that, Scott? Tom?
Well, all he was doing was like, he was just basically, because he didn't want to copy Bela Lugosi, obviously. And he was doing it all low key and sexy. Like, that was all he was doing, was just like,
yeah,
like playing.
He's doing like he did in the stage production. Yeah. And seductive. And yes,
he wouldn't wear any fangs or anything like that either. That was the other thing he refused.
Somebody just said something about the Hungarian film, and that's the one we're referring to.
This one.
Tom and I were,
from Gambit.
Yeah, that's Gambit. That's the one we were talking about. Yeah, it's still missing.
Oh, was it Hungarian? I thought it was Russian. My bad. I couldn't remember which.
It's either Eastern European or Russian. But let's see, Mark Kermode's a really nice guy. Yeah, he didn't know how to get a hold of anybody when he wanted to make that Blade Runner documentary that he did. What was it called? On the Edge of Blade Runner. Was that the name of it? I think that was the name of it. And so he came to me because I was interconnected with everybody all the way up into Ridley Scott's office. I'm like, yeah, I know everybody. So I got him connected, and he got all the actors to be in the documentary. I think he does his reviews mostly on the radio. Yeah, he's part of the BBC radio show. And they also broadcast on the web. So, you'll see him talking about stuff. But I don't know. He's got such a weird name. He really did, in my opinion, the definitive Exorcist documentary. That's the best thing he ever did. Have you seen that one, Tom?
I think so, if it's the one I think you're thinking of.
Because it was on the Blu-ray. It's on the Blu-ray. It's the main documentary.
Seen it then, yeah.
Yeah, it's Mark Kermode's, and he did a fantastic job with that one. So, but let's see. Anything else we want to add? Yeah, On the Edge of Blade Runner 2000. Gambit, if you go look on that, you'll see my name. There's a special thank you because I helped him make the whole thing happen. I wanted no part of working on it because I was busy, but I did help him connect with everybody for that documentary. And people have asked me, like, Hot Wheels. I never told you this, Tom. Hot Wheels, Matchbox, and another company that made cars, might have been Corgi, I can't remember, all came to me, and Gerry, we're both Garys, that run Blade Zone, and came to us to find out how to get the rights to do a spinner from Blade Runner. I said, this is who you need to contact. It's called Tandem Entertainment. They own the Blade Runner partnership. It's Bud York and Gerry Parencio. And I said, good fucking luck. And they said, well, what do you think the problem's going to be? And I said, they're going to ask for an amount of money that you will look at and go, it's not even worth doing this. Because that's how Gerry Parencio and Bud York ran Blade Runner for 30 years. And it took one of them dying to finally, get out of that rut. What's this caused quite a scandal when one of the actors committed self-deletion, just like the character in the movie. What are we talking about there?
I don't know.
I'm not sure which movie they're referring to. Yeah.
He says Spetters and he brings up Verhoeven.
Yeah.
I don't know the film. I know Verhoeven. The first film of him I know is oh my God, Flesh and Blood or something like that, with Rutger Hauer, Brian James, and the little chick, American actress. I can't remember her name.
Jennifer Jason
Lee. Jennifer Jason Lee. She's Vic Morrow's daughter, by the way, if you didn't know that.
Mm.
Vic Morrow, the guy that was killed making the Twilight Zone movie.
How about if we wrap? We have 2 hours, 35 minutes.
Well, that's why I keep asking. Does anybody have any last little anecdotes? Otherwise, we can get the hell out of here.
No.
You get Anima. Do you have anything to add to that? Like how stupid I am?
No, she needs to go.
I am falling asleep here, dude. You kill me by going over on these shows. It's been a really long week, so.
This will wake you up.
I love how he switches on the light and the fireplace at the same time. They go on and off. I love that.
I know the fire goes on and off. It's fucking goofy. All right, we're out of here, guys. Thanks for everybody being here. Tom, appreciate you coming. It was nice to have Chris here. Boy, he takes over a show when he comes on, though, I tell you.
Oh, yeah, he does.
But he's gotten what I love about him, and I make fun of him for it, is he reminds me of John Del Vecchio, that it takes him 4 hours to describe what happened in the 60-minute show. So there you go.
We need to have Chris on just to talk about movie making, not about one particular movie, because he goes all over the place.
Yeah, he's all over.
On as a guest about movie making.
I want to thank Tom Baker, Penny, Regis, Slasher Fred, Brian Sanchez, Read by Nature, JPRPH1, War Monkey, I Have No Dick, Andy Morrow, Ram Bam 3000, let's see, Soul Assassin, Eddie A. Shinansky, Caveat Ties, Courtney's Fellowship and Oddballs, Sander Hammer Slag, DJ Play Nice, The Truck Reviewer, Gambit 87, Erica Frank, Connie Cleary, and of course 6 was here, Wade Nation, and Hail in Place. Oh my God, are there more? Holy shit.
Yep.
Parrot Head, James Hoagie. Oh my God. Okay, I'm done. All right, that's it. All right, we're going to get the hell out of here. Everybody have a great day. Tom, thanks again. You always bring your A game. Appreciate it, buddy. Everybody have a great day. Martin, Deleted Scenes, have a great day. And Anima Confusa, I'll see you after the show.
Wait,
baby.
I remember.
What?
I remember. Never go to the Carpathian Mountains.
Thanks for the safety tip, Egon. All right, we're out of here. Bye, guys.
Bye.